Imagine being trapped in the worst possible nightmare, a dream where every decision you make, every path you follow, is haunted by the fear of failure. That's Corpse Party Book of Shadows, a horror experience that tells the stories of the characters stuck in Heavenly Host Elementary School. Once again, it also goes into more detail about some of the more unknown Corpse Party characters, and really ups the violence from the first game, if that was even possible. Now, since this is a sequel, it's advised best to watch my video on the first in the series, though technically you don't need to, but it's a banger video. No bias, of course, so I would recommend it. This video will be a complete narrative playthrough commentary with added analysis and discussions on the lore, the characters, and, well, you get the idea. If that interests you, then sit back, get comfy, get food and snacks or whatever you want. And if you're watching this on a second monitor as background noise, don't worry, the video is designed to work perfectly with the visuals and without. All you'll miss is some really stupid jokes. And with that said, let's take a look at the horror game Corpse Party Book of Shadows, the sequel to Corpse Party Blood Covered. Before we start this story, let me explain how this part of the canon story came to be. So this is the next entry in the Corpse Party series, but one that doesn't necessarily take place after the first game. This timeline, and I know timelines somehow exist in every popular game series ever, however this timeline is actually from one of the wrong ends in a time loop, so it's even more confusing, but it's actually really simple. So this comes from the first game when they do the exit ritual without appeasing Sachiko first. The day resets and Satoshi, he fails to stop them doing the charm, leading to them being stuck in Heavenly Host again. And that's all you really need to know. This game starts with a character called Hinoe, Ayumi's older sister who is a medium, and she can sense the spirits being unnatural and an unease, which apparently her and Ayumi have felt all their lives, so that's kind of unfortunate. Then we get the episode title, Seal. Then we see Naomi, thinking about stuff, basically just remembering the stain her late father made on her 5th birthday. We then see Kisaragi Academy and Ayumi talking to Naomi about this sense of deja vu. Naomi notes her usual creepy way of acting. However, on this particular day, someone knocks and opens the door. Ah, a gremlin in anime girl form. She's been, Seiko-ish about Naomi and fangirling a bit. This is the face of someone who will ruin your life. Naomi tries talking to Seiko about her deja vu, and Seiko has a mysterious mark on her neck, but I'm sure that's nothing. Then Naomi talks about this being her first ever slumber party. Wait a minute. What game am I playing? So Naomi talks about her and Seiko being friends forever, but never being at each other's house, until now. We get some more context on Seiko being the mother figure of her household, and that she will come home after the festival cleanup tomorrow. Naomi then starts having fun with Seiko, talking about general stuff, but then gets sentimental about it all. We then see Naomi's mother for the first time. It's Naomi with longer hair pretty much. She's called Natsumi, and she bonds with Seiko instantly. With her revealing, Naomi speaks about Seiko a lot, but not just her, also Satoshi Mochida. Seiko, though, already loves to tease Naomi about Satoshi.
Seiko, stop.
This really sounds like Corpse Party is now a teen romance drama, and, well, in some parts I guess it is. Natsumi then wants to gossip with Seiko on a girls' night out, so yeah, that should be fun. They then go bathe together. Wait, where are we going with the— oh, I love Corpse Party. They can be really weird sometimes and uncomfortable, and this is one of those times. So we'll leave this with the implication they bathed together, I'm not showing this, and they talked and bathed and deepened their friendship. Well, this Corpse Party has sure started weird, but the series can't get any weirder. After the bath, they sleep in the same bed and start talking more, with Seiko implying she could kiss her and die a happy woman. A callback to one of Naomi's dream sequences in the first game. Then Naomi simply says she would hate to see you die, subtle as a brick. Naomi then thinks about how Seiko acts around her, and if she wasn't her friend, it would be classed as harassment. or they would assume they are lovers. Two very opposite thoughts by Naomi. Then Naomi murders the ship. It's not like she's actually in love with her, and she really didn't feel that way at all. So she really likes Seiko, but she doesn't like Seiko in that way. Well, that's what she's saying at this time. I'll give you a lifeboat, don't worry. Naomi continues to say she thinks of Seiko as a very dear friend. You know, this might actually be the horror part for some people. And figured how close they were was just a normal friend thing. She really goes on about how everything just seemed natural and that people were misunderstanding how they acted. More talk with Naomi and more really weird localization. What the actual? Then Naomi starts getting creepy, describing the shape of her head. And when you know, you know. And when you know, this is about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face, and that's a tongue twister sentence. I don't know why I wrote that one. Or do you say to your friends, I love the shape of your head? And if you do, what the f? Well, next day they wake up ready for school. Seiko calls Natsumi her mother, and then they head to Kisaragi Academy, and it's the culture festival with them holding a red bean soup restaurant. Never had that soup, kinda want it now though. We then see the inside of the classroom, and I'm really realizing how this may not seem like a horror game yet, but just wait. We see the whole gang from the first game again, but Satoshi feels uneasy since he's remembering the whole, you know, school of torture and murder and no escape thing. He clearly knows what's happening. Seiko then starts harassing Naomi again. You know, at this point just send her to death row. We then see how the school really goes all out with designed kimono costumes. How rich is this place? Or did strive to achieve just never achieve funding? This is such an inside joke, I'm sorry. Apparently Mayu is the one who created the clothing. How she isn't already famous at this point with, you know, her age, what's it again, 16? Making this high quality clothing for a school. Learning to make kimonos from drama club, she should be a millionaire. Then they clean up and we've caught up with the first corpse party game, kind of, or the start of it. With Ayumi pulling out the famous Sachiko paper doll, which is like a stick man that anyone drew as a kid. Satoshi, though, he remembers how everything's gonna happen. So he tries to stop it by saying, ダメだ! これはダメだ! No, don't do this. They laugh at him, and somehow, despite knowing that all your friends could end up being tortured and killed, he doesn't, you know, like fake an injury by collapsing, which he should go into a very intense panic attack, grab the doll and run, act crazy, I don't know, slam your head into a desk, anything. Who cares if they don't believe you? They are once again being dragged into that place and maybe it's fated. But at least try. Instead, he sat off to the side with tears in his eyes. I mean, just wow. Then Satoshi tries the tactic of explaining it's a time loop, like, dude, just fake something. So everyone laughs at Satoshi, as you would, but Naomi starts to remember things, and the feeling of deja vu. Then Satoshi, for some reason, decides to also grab the doll himself. Naomi feels something is wrong, but Ayumi and Satoshi doom them all. Their fate is sealed. It cuts forward, and we're actually near the end of Chapter 1 events, when Naomi was attacked by Yoshi. That must sound crazy out of context. She was basically attacked by a ghost in the infirmary. Then while vomiting, Naomi starts to remember she has been here before. We once again get to witness the fight between Seiko and Naomi. Naomi cracks again, but this time she remembers she's been here. And then Naomi straight up spoils Seiko's fate in that she's gonna get hanged, and you can actually see the hanging marks on her neck clearly now. Last time Naomi had an influence that was stopping her from speaking. This time she doesn't seem to have that entirely. We get the choice again to apologize or not, and again, it's not really much of a choice. We obviously don't apologize. But Naomi once again is unable to fully apologize, coughing and spluttering, and that's a fun one. Seiko then gets the wrong idea to leave Naomi alone again. Naomi then feels something stuck in her mouth that was preventing her from being able to apologize, and sticks her fingers in there and pulls out large clumps of never-ending black hair all the way down to her stomach. This is absolutely vile. Like, this is probably one of the worst things. She then hears a weird sound, kind of like something from Unsought, and sees a flash of Seiko hanging. And yes, unfortunately I need to censor most things on YouTube. I learned that valuable lesson from Still Wakes the Deep. Naomi then gains a new sense and feels that someone or something wants Seiko to die in this timeline as well. So she's already worked out she's in a new timeline. This is where the gameplay of the game starts, and I will use that term very loosely. This is a visual novel in pretty much all ways possible. which is why this video is going to be pretty different in a way from my previous Corpse Party blood covered video, because I won't be using the chibi avatars since I'm pretty much going to be constantly explaining stuff the whole video, like there's no real point of cutting away this time. With all that, this will be the only part of the video actually explaining gameplay. We get to see just how dark Heavenly Host is in a very realistic style throughout the whole game, but the only unrealistic stylized art this time will be the characters themselves, leaning into the anime style, but Heavenly Host looks absolutely terrifying. And it was pretty scary in the first game, but with pixel graphics. It just looked really cool. You had everything lit up and you could see, but here we see just how dark the school is. The gameplay for Book of Shadows has us looking around a still picture, basically looking for stuff to interact with that will turn blue when we can. We can scroll up, down, left and right and really look around the whole area. This time looking at every minute detail. The artwork is really well done here, and it's our best look at what Heavenly Host would actually look like if it existed. This mode we're in is called Search Mode, and it took me a while to actually work out how to open the map, which shows the pixel art sprite of the character. We click on one, and Naomi travels through it in order. So very different from the RPG Maker's type gameplay of the first game. And to me, it's a massive downgrade in terms of fun. Like, while the first one was also very visual novel-y, that's a real word to trust, you still had chase scenes moving around and a better sense of danger. This is more observing the world of Corpse Party than living in it. That's not to say it doesn't get scary though. We walk forward and eventually find strands of wire that was placed in front of us. Probably would have hurt and killed us if we walked into that, since you know it's razor sharp piano wire. More signs of the curse of Heavenly Host, just placing traps in itself. The whole damn building is the enemy. And the outside and the world is trying to kill you. What hope do they actually have? We find a note on the wall in blood red lettering reading, "Getting close to the darkness is one way to learn the truth." This whole place sits close to darkness after all. Well, that's pretty ominous. Entering a classroom on the blackboard, green board, well, there's red writing, and interacting with it adds a blackboard, but it's green. It says, "Your friend is a traitor, you're going to be killed, run." And a spirit speaks, saying in Japanese, "Soul burned by waves of energy, pay tribute to God in this house of Shinozaki. Purified by the flames of hell, judgment passed in the great beyond." Naomi gets agitated by the message since it wasn't here before when they checked with Seiko. It seems to her like someone's trying to split them apart.
頭がおかしくなりそうに。誰かいるの？嫌がらせはやめてよ！
Naomi breaks down a bit and then runs out the room. She wanders a bit and we come to a corridor with a door that's fixed like a decoration. But looking down the dark corridor, there seems to be a figure sitting down at the end, motionless. We interact and it's a decomposing corpse that smells like a decomposing corpse. I really don't need to go into much detail about this. What's interesting though is after we check this, our screen gets tinted red. It doesn't go away when we check the menu. And that Sachiko doll has filled up with what's called the darkening meter. The new mechanic for Book of Shadows. You need to manage this by either filling it up to progress, but if you get high enough, it will trigger a wrong end, or even just a darkening game over. And this fills when you observe corpses or any scary thing. So it's hell on earth for someone who, I don't know, wants to check every single little thing to talk about. I don't know if I like it or not. It does make the game look really red, and it makes sense lore-wise. But it's pretty annoying that you can't just observe stuff you want to, or you risk losing. And checking the corpses are once again the collectibles from reading the name tags and learning how they died. Like suffered fatal injury to cervical vertebrae. Entering another classroom we find more piano wire. There's a lot of wire on this one, huh? Last time that only really happened to Yoshiki and Ayumi. We also spot a lever and pull it. The old rusted thing gets rid of the wire. We pick up the flashlight and take it with us, but it's low on batteries. Should have had a crank one then. We then have a body right beside the light. Lots of corpses in Corpse Party, it turns out. And in the next room there's actually two corpses. Ooh, getting fancy now. But before looking at them, there's a really creepy child's drawing with a young girl with a wide open mouth, drawn in crayon. As we pass the corridors, we hear a voice screaming for someone to help them. Followed by Sachiko's voice saying, Nakashima returned to class grade 3, room A. However, before that, the corridor has the wire gone since we hit the lever, which lets us progress onto a stairwell, with, once again, a sadistically placed bit of wire at the bottom of the stairs. Forgetting that one going down would be a bad outcome. Upstairs is nothing but bathrooms, so Naomi heads back down and Sachiko once again calls through the speakers to go to the class. But this time the door opens on its own. Naomi gets dragged inside, and a voice of a man and footsteps approach, but it's too dark, we can't see. The man's voice speaks about an examination that is about to begin. Naomi, however, quickly takes out the flashlight and we have a timer appear. And when a timer appears, everyone panics. Like, if you're watching this video, enjoying it, and haven't subscribed, liked, or left a comment by the time this timer on screen counts down, there's the possibility that you might be stuck in a time loop, having to watch Corpse Party blood drive cutscenes for eternity. And that's literal torture. Okay, before the video resumes, one more thing. This channel lately has been doing so well, and there's a lot of new subs and views and comments and likes, so thanks so much for the support. And at the time of making this channel is really close to 5k sub. Guys, you sub too quick. It's already at 5k, so we're aiming for 10k now. But again, thanks so much everyone for the support. The timer is counting down really fast, and we need to search around with the light and find the source of the voice. With 4 seconds left, we spot a purple interactive thing, and clicking on it, it reveals a malevolent spirit. With it found, Naomi retreats out the classroom. We wander around a bit until going back to the classroom with 2 corpses. But this time the lights go out and green writing is everywhere saying, "Die, anger, I'll kill you." Stuff like that basically. Messages of despair. It's spooky, but it's ultimately harmless, apart from the darkening mirror. Weirdly, Naomi can actually go back and look at the infirmary, which is the last thing she would ever do. We look at Yoshi's desk and see a black and white picture of a man in a suit. That man will become more important in Blood Drive, which isn't exactly the most encouraging thing to say. Going back to the class with the red writing, that makes Naomi angry. We get the option to kill it. So Naomi, well, she does a war cry and kills the board. Somehow creating a blood sound effect, and then says, she was mad, so she killed it. Alright, Naomi, you're going up on the character ranking list because that was awesome. Makes no sense, but awesome. So after Naomi has killed her first victim, we now have enough darkening to progress going back to the bathroom. Naomi starts talking about how she looked everywhere for Seiko but has been unable to find her, and feels like she's losing her mind. Then we hear the sound of kicking against something or the banging of a door. Inside the toilets, a pretty familiar situation. So she enters the girl's lavatory and creaks open the door to see a noose, but nothing attached to it. Naomi though feels a breeze from behind the stall and starts looking around and knocking around until she finds a hollow pot. She pushes on it and it opens like a door, climbing down a ladder into a small dark room under the toilets. We've been here before in Corpse Party, but Naomi didn't realize she'd been here till much later on. Naomi slips in the cavernous-like area surrounded in darkness and cave walls. Her ankle is swollen from the slip. Now she can't even climb the ladder back up and is, well, she's stuck down here. But suddenly a voice of a child calls out, telling Naomi not to give up. And then it's revealed to be Sachiko Shinozaki, the girl in red, her strangle marks visible on her neck. Her eyes kind of look like a blue crescent moon, very different to how we've seen Sachiko before. She confronts Naomi, telling her she's gonna let her see Seiko. Then her act drops and she speaks about how painful memories are the funnest of them all. We get to see Seiko's POV, similar to Blood Covered, with Seiko crying, then blaming herself for making Naomi mad, which it was never Seiko's fault, but somehow Naomi actually finds Seiko and runs to her and apologizes. What the hell is going on? This is what everyone wanted. We were entering a golden timeline where we can save everyone. Naomi gets really descriptive about Seiko saying warm and alive and smelling lovely. Okay, Naomi. Naomi and Seiko enter the custodian's closet to take a rest. Seiko still can't find her paper doll scrap, dropping it somewhere. Naomi and Seiko basically at this point are just gonna stay in the custodian's closet since why would you want to wander those halls? Especially with all the piano wire now. However, eventually Naomi catches Seiko just staring at her intensely. Seiko's blushing, which is confusing Naomi. If we remember from the first game, Seiko said she would work up a confession to Naomi when they meet again. Since that didn't exactly happen, this is Seiko working up a confession. But she gets shy and tries to play it off, but Naomi in her detailed mind thoughts tells her to say what she's been thinking.
になるじゃん。言ってよ。笑わない？
Naomi comments about her being so dense all this time, which, yeah. Then Seiko asks for a kiss.
キスして。え？したいの。好きだから。
Naomi then starts panicking about Seiko's confession and in response to her confession, basically thinks no homo and sprints out the room leaving Seiko by herself.
最高。ごめん。私。
Well, Naomi, you're going down on the wrecking list after that one. Wow. Side note though, look what I found. My only piece of Corpse Party fan art I ever did, where I tried drawing Naomi. This taught me how much time it takes to make art and why I respect fan artists so much. For their dedication, and my drawing is not great, but it's not bad. But speaking of bad, Naomi's reaction. She starts crying, feeling either happy, sad, or like she lost a friend. She thinks how whether or not she was able to return her feeling, and she owes her a thanks at least. I mean, hell, she owes her more of an apology at this point. She then hears what she describes as the sound of water coming from a faucet. Wait, what the heck? Faucet? Alright, non-UKers, it's a tap. The water comes from a tap. You don't ask for faucet water, you ask for tap water. Alright, back to Naomi's suffering. She looks down, and black liquid is running down her thighs. She picks up a bit of it on her finger, and it's not blood, but tar-like. And then Naomi stupidly trips again while wiping it on her skirt. I mean, how do you even fall over from that? She then pretty much feels the full effect of the darkening, splitting her soul and her body and making her own mass feel really heavy. You know, that might be why she fell. Actually, that was me being a bit mean there. Naomi gets really specific about the human cranium because she's trained to be a nurse. You may forget this by the fact that she never does any medical care thing whatsoever in this game. Naomi starts thinking her body is about to explode, but then Sachiko says to be careful because you're about to fall into the valley of past and future memories. Okay, wait, where's this going? The next scene we see is Naomi looking at her own home at night. Entering, we see a red-bathed room. Naomi's dining room, with her father speaking to her about bringing her a cat. His name is Naoyuki. Why does everyone in this family have their name start with N? We basically get some painful memories about Naomi being left by her parents because they're busy, and she runs away for a bit with the cat. Then starts blaming the cat for her problems. Then the cat runs away and Naomi's sad. I think it's meant to be a metaphor for Naomi blaming Seiko then splitting up. Naomi then sees a shadowy figure of Seiko in her house, but realizes this isn't reality. This part is very strange, not gonna lie. We then see a flash of a railway sign saying Kishi. Then looking closer, Seiko isn't Seiko and it's a shadowy phantom with glowing red eyes. It mimics Seiko taunting Naomi. Then Sachiko appears with a kind smile asking if she will do anything to save her friend. Then saying she is the one who controls the fate of this world, Pikachu. She then starts talking in weird phrases like, what you saw was events from your past, which is your future. Essentially Naomi is in a time loop, which she worked out instantly at the start of the game, so that's not really a shocking reveal, Sachiko. So now we must fight against fate, and that always goes well. Naomi blinks back and is outside the toilet again, but with the power of foresight, like how she now says the black liquid is a manifestation of dread, that's some crazy knowledge to just know. Naomi enters the bathroom, hears a thud on the door again. We get the choice to open it or think about it. So we obviously open it, and as we do, Seiko is hanging by a noose with drool dripping from her mouth and eyes, a very familiar sight. She gets a vision of the dark future and knows she must act quickly since time is coming down to the wire if we're going to be able to save Seiko. We get the choice of using the bucket or thinking of something else. If you remember the bucket from the first game, it doesn't exactly help and no one pees in it. That's a different bucket though. Some really hype save Seiko music starts playing and Naomi starts thinking. She lifts Seiko up on her shoulders and pushes her against the wall so she can breathe, and unties the noose. Naomi has just saved Seiko. Naomi has created a new world, a new destiny. Naomi, however, only has memories of the other timeline up until this moment, so she's missing a teeny tiny weeny little bit of information that might help her right now. Seiko starts coming back to consciousness. Naomi starts tearfully crying, asking why Seiko would try to hang herself. Seiko screams and runs away. See, Naomi forgot she was the one who hanged Seiko while possessed, so Seiko running for her life, it really makes a lot of sense. Seiko sprints out the bathroom, down the stairway, and we hear the sound of a collapsing body.
They took everything from us. Again.
If you haven't noticed by now, Cloud and Tifa are my absolute favourite characters ever, so heads up, you're gonna see a lot of them on this channel. You'd better also like them. Or, well, you're dead to me. Speaking of dead things, Seiko! Yep, she's dead again. Cause Seiko running away from Naomi didn't get her heads up and ran right into the piano wire at the bottom of the stairs. Decapitating herself. Sachiko then picks up her blood in her palm and starts drinking it, taunting Naomi about ever thinking that we could save Seiko. And here's a bit of key information. Once someone's fate passes through these halls, it locks into place forever. So anyone who died in the first timeline, which is the first game, kind of... Yeah, it's the first game up until the wrong end without appeasing. Well, even I'm getting confused now. So pretty much, you can never save Seiko. She will always die. You can't save her. You can't change destiny or fate. You gotta live with it. Oh, and as a fun bonus, the way you die gets worse each time. It's a never-ending loop, eventually watching their friends die in different ways, a worse version each time. Though if we really think about it, Seiko died pretty instantly here, getting decapitated, and sure, you feel the pain of how you died forever, and wire would hurt, but compared to hanging, is it really worse? Maybe I'm thinking about this too much now. Sachiko then takes Naomi's memories again and taunts her about how they can come up with fun ways for Seiko to die each time. Or every corpse party game. Should have appeased Sachiko properly the first time, I guess. The chapter called Seal ends and it says an alternate universe tale. Now another confusing thing about this game is that all the chapters aren't the same universe. Some take place after wrong ends, which how could this end even have a worse end? So this game is a sequel, prequel, but none of them as well. I guess it's a sequel from the wrong end of the time loop ending, but the true end in the first game takes place after all this, except for the last chapter, which is the only sequel part of the... Chapter 2 starts with us playing as Mayu, someone we didn't get to spend too long with, and she's just been dragged out the infirmary and looked down at her body, which is soaked with blood and pierced with large pieces of glass. She then sees the ghost children and is slammed into the hallway wall. Mayu's spirit then describes her state in way too much detail and conglomeration of glistening blood, entrails, and other miscellaneous bodily fluids. Lovely. Okay, I get this is a visual novel, but wow, do they never stop talking about their inner thoughts. Like, she's still going, seeing a conglomeration of raw meat. We get it, game. She's a lot of squishy body parts on a wall. Moving on. She gets to her point, and we find out she's actually a severed head, torn off and staring at the mess she was. So this right now is similar to the first corpse party, except there was no Mayu head left behind in the first one. All her body was just smashed to pieces. But it fades to black, and Mayu wakes up thinking that experience was a dream. And now we gotta play as Mayu and Heavenly Host, alive, or currently alive. Then the title of the chapter flashes up, called Demise. I mean, you can't get more subtle than that. Mayu enters a classroom and finds her first dead body in the school. This girl had her eyes stabbed with pencils, such a joker. Mayu actually does something here that no other character thinks, and pulls out her phone to try calling the police. However, after dialing 110, the Japanese emergency services, the call doesn't go through. Since Heavenly Host is in another dimension, calls don't go through, sadly. Or maybe upgrade your phone contract. This would be a perfect time for some mobile ad, but I'm not sponsored, sadly. As Mayu tries leaving though, a blue spirit arises from the girl's rotting corpse and tells her, we get a choice here to try and help or walk away. We try to help. So we now have a goal. Find a blanket and hide the body. Then in one of the hallways we find an infirmary bedsheet, so we take that and we cover the girl's body. The spirit thanks Mayu, says as a girl it would be embarrassing for people to see her decomposing body. At that point I feel that's the least of your worries, but hey, that's just my opinion. We then pick up a paper charm from the body which Mayu takes as a gift for helping her, which meta-wise is a gift, because this is a video game. Well, also kind of a book. A visual novel, as they say. Mayu then goes to the entranceway and we can choose to examine a body in closer detail. She discovers a box cutter covered in dry blood that was used to kill this girl. As she goes to examine the notebook she took, it suddenly falls to the ground and the pages start flipping rapidly. The last page saying, Hina is mine, and obsession about protecting this Hina. All narrowing down to a boy being obsessed with her and killing her so no one can have her. Probably influenced by Darkening, because like most things in the story, it's influenced by the Darkening. She picks up the ID from the body and sees words written in not pencil or ink, but an unknown substance saying abuse at what we can work out is the boy who killed her. Mayu is understandably grossed out and extremely uncomfortable by what she has learned. Now what's happening here is that Moshige's voice is an echo from the past, future, or present from the same place but a different dimension, called a closed space. Just a little catch up in case you forgot that point. So while Moshige's voice is heard, he's not actually here, it's just more psychological horror torture for the characters. Another earthquake happens and during it Mayu's student ID falls into a hole. Now the paper charm and corpse play is interesting since you need it to go home in the ritual. But there also seems to be some kind of guarantee of doom if you lose it and you don't recover it. Though you can find it again in most cases. Then you're still likely to 99% die every time, even if you have it. But it's better not to lose it, obviously. Luckily for Mayu, she does find it, picks it up, and tells herself to be more careful in the future. We then get a flashback of Moshige and Mayu talking about theatre kid problems and them not being allowed to put on a show outside of the school. I kid you not, the stuff Moshige is speaking about here is the most pretentious speech I've heard in a while. You know what, Moshige should be on Twitter. He'd fit right in with the folks who didn't care about stuff but still write essays like they're trying to pull a 5-star character in the gacha of arrogance. But unfortunately for Moshige, he can't change this script. Mayu starts calling him cute when he's mad. Not that kind of mad. They both flirt with each other, I think, with theatre kid terms like, I'm the poster girl for the drama club, basically saying she's the baddest bee in Kisaragi Academy, ending it with it's tough being such a renaissance woman. Mayu reveals in her thoughts though that she's just playing an act of being the girl people think she is being. She may look confident, but in actuality she's terrified and quite insecure, like most people. She then thinks of Moshige again and starts crying. But suddenly, she hears someone approaching. And it's Yoshiki.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
The greatest character has found Mayu alive and crying in the middle of Heavenly Host hallway. We learn from Yoshiki that he's lost Ayumi. I mean, it always happens. In the time frame, it's when Ayumi got possessed and ran to the front door, but somehow Yoshiki didn't see that and went up the stairs instead.
さっきまでな。あいつ急に様子がおかしくなっちまって。なんかこう、悪いもんに取りつかれたみたいな感じで、わけわかんないこと叫びながらどっか行っちまったんだよ。
そうなんだ。心
Then Mayu reveals that Ayumi has got a real affinity for the spirit world, which is such a crazy statement to just say or know about someone. Weirdly, the scene then cuts to Ayumi speaking to Yoshiki in the locker room beside the school pool. Yeah, weird transitions of time going on here. Ayumi calls Yoshiki a rank amateur in the matter of spirit, which, okay Ayumi, you're not exactly the expert here considering you're the only one getting possessed, not Yoshiki. Ayumi and Yoshiki then do the usual stuff with puzzles and end up in the custodian's closet. It's actually really interesting to see how they made this background here, especially the space here, and how big it is. And how big the actual closet in the closet is. At the back of the room they find a small chest made of tortoise shell. Hearing a noise inside the closet, they were about to investigate, but Ayumi has been possessed again. Can we even call her an amateur or a newbie in the matters of spirit at this point? So she's been possessed by one of the spirits who died here, talking about something being bitter and wanting to go to karaoke. And I think they might be cannibalizing their friend, but that doesn't really matter. With Ayumi now staring at one particular part of the floor. For some reason, I do find Ayumi's possession to be more creepy in this game. I think it's the music choice and the speech being more quiet. It's actually a pretty terrifying thought to think about how the people that died here will possess you. Ayumi then starts banging her head against the wall from the mad ramblings. The spirit possessing Ayumi speaks about her sister and how could you do this to me? Naho then appears out of nowhere, calling Ayumi an interesting specimen, with Yoshiki once again saying her eyes look like a dead fish. Since she's dead, this is accurate. Naho tells Yoshiki that Ayumi seems to have a gift, then gives him some advice. Talking to Yoshiki about mediums, shrine maidens, and shamans. Okay. Ayumi has the power to be possessed, which we already kind of knew. And I wouldn't exactly call it a gift, more of a curse. She does reveal something very interesting in that the spirits aren't really spirits, they're the thoughts and remnants of the broken minds of those who died here. So they're more concepts than the actual humanity that once inhabited the bodies. But there is also still spirits as well, so it's really messed up because the spirits themselves are just kind of feeling the pain of how they died forever, while the negative thoughts of sadness, fear, and anger is all that remains and then forms this. Heavenly Host has really got to be one of the most cursed places in fiction. Naho then tells us that these talents, if she learns to control them, could help us escape, which it didn't exactly help in the story, so I don't know what she's on about here. Unless they're talking about the doll, in which I don't know if that was an Ayumi exclusive. Naho then disappears, giving terrible advice and distracting Yoshiki from getting to Ayumi, who's ran off to who knows where. And Yoshiki is now in the closed space dimension that Mayu was in. And we've caught up to Mayu crying again. Honestly, this game has some really weird pacing. It's like a manga or a comic book, just random time jumps and flashbacks that go on for a very long time. They both agree to search for Ayumi and Moshige together because, duh.
でも、一人で探すより、二人で探す方が絶対にいいよ。
だな。いつもの鈴本らしくなってきたじゃねえの。
However, first they have a bathroom break, which brings back some personal memories. Just use the damn bucket. Sorry, were we? Yes, Mayu in the creepy bathroom with no bath, only despair. Mayu looks down in her stomach and sees a strange red mark like a bruise, described as a weirdly coloured spiderweb, the web of shadows. Mayu, of course, doesn't tell Yoshiki about this, and they move on, so obviously this mark is when Mayu was obliterated by being thrown into a wall, a remnant of her first fate in Heavenly Host. Like Seiko had with her neck, Yoshiki met the polite ghost who tells people to They search for a while, but find no one and nothing, until they hear a weird sound.
聞こえた？
この中みてえだな。
They find a girl bound by white cloth, blindfolded and gagged, with a deep purple mark on her legs. Mayu thinks the mark look like hers, though calls them rope burns. Yoshiki, like the goat he is, notices that the cloth is attached to a bucket, hanging right over the girl. One wrong move, and bucket falls, with whatever is inside of it. So essentially we've walked into a saw trap. that the victim will thrash around and cause the unknown bucket to fall on them. It's pretty evil, if I do say so myself, but if we are being honest, it's something interesting happening for this school after a lot of wandering dark hallways. Yoshiki reaches for the bandages from her mouth and she starts calling out for her friends Nari, Hikari, and Chihaya, names that might sound familiar to some of the viewers. Mayu manages to calm her down a bit and Yoshiki makes sure the bucket doesn't fall. With this girl free, we see it's a smaller girl with blue eyes and short chestnut hair, with a white ribbon in a tanned costume different from Kisaragi Academy. She tells them her name is Nana, which we remember from the extra chapters in the first game. And we found her corpse in a dissection room in a bucket. Wow, they really like buckets. Mayu and Nana then separate from Yoshiki and she had a private talk with her by the pool.
君って鈍感だから。いえ、こちらこそすみません。しょうがないよ。あんな怖いことされたら私だって。ここなら他に人もいないから遠慮なく洗っちゃいなよ。なんだったら私あっち向いてよっか。
Out of all odds, Nana is also a theatre kid. Great, now there's 3, potentially 5 theatre kids. This really is hell, isn't it? They do more play talks, a costume designer banter, and then Mayu brings up the bruises on her thighs. Nana tells Mayu it's probably from when she was bound. This chapter having non-Kisaragi Academy students, well, it's what I wanted Book of Shadows to do more, honestly. Because we already know the story of the main characters, well, most of them. But Nana and all the other school we don't really know, or we know less of. So it would have been better to just have more of their stories. Which we do get a lot of, but we could have had more. They meet up with Yoshiki again, and spot a glinting object in a hole. With some bandages they found, they make a rope down to the dark, dark hole. Mayu goes down into the hole, and it's very dark and smells awful. We can make out some realistic corpses on the ground. Since this art style does clash with the more anime stylized characters and the semi-realistic surroundings. This one in particular, though, is probably one of the most disturbing looking. There really is a corpse party in this room, covered in blood and wooden walls and just corpses littered everywhere. Some decomposing, some look more fresh. One corpse being so fresh, there's a hint of body heat. They really went descriptive with this one. I know blood covered did as well, but it's impressive how they found so many ways to describe a corpse. This girl's corpse has her fingers removed and her tongue. Then Mayu sees the ID and the name Hikara Kirigami. The same name Nana said, and from the same school, so we can deduce this is Nana's friend, or was. Mayu decides not to tell Nana, and honestly, I think it's probably the right call. The glistening object turns out to be a glass bottle filled with a clear liquid. With it, Mayu climbs back out. Nana recognizes the glass as holy water, and her friend Hikari had a bottle just like it. I mean, what are the odds? It's crazy coincidence, nothing down their trust. We get some humble jumble about holy water protecting people from spirits. Hey, maybe this will come in handy. Nana then thinks, wait, is this my friend's bottle? And is she down there? And Mayu she just lies to her. Well played, Mayu, very adult. Tactics right there. As the group walks on, they encounter some vengeful spirits. They decide to try throwing the holy water at them, and it works. And well, the spirits had a good point about you're still alive. So they basically want to possess the live bodies. Ugh.
騒ぐなって。どうってことね。ちょっと手にやけどしただけだ。ごめんね。
私がぼやっとしてたから。私、絆創膏持ってるから、すぐ。あれ
どうした？
ちょっと。はい、絆創膏。あ、私貼ります。やけどしたとこを見せてください。
They then use a key they found in a box we found earlier, and it turns out to be a music box. And it plays the theme song of Corpse Party Blood Covered, and Mayu starts singing it.
オルゴール？なんだろう。聞いたことがあるような。会いたくて、会えなくて、君はどこなの？
やめてくれよ、こんな状況で。
ごめん。
Inside the music box is another key, because most keys in video games just seem to lead to things that reveal more keys, till you find the final key that most likely opens some kind of door. Speaking of, they use the key on a door, and inside is Ayumi herself, still possessed but unharmed. possessed Ayumi really has some interesting language.
ついてるバケモンども、いい加減篠崎から離れやがれ。
これは俺たちのものだ。この体を俺のものにしたい。
ダメだ。
The spirits possessing her then speak to Yoshiki, however, there is more than one spirit possessing her. What's really messed up is the female spirits saying that they don't feel the pain of death when possessing the body of the living, so pleads to let them have her. One of the male spirits even tries lying, saying they will help them get out of the school alive, clearly something they didn't achieve, so it's utter crap. Obviously, Yoshiki says what needs to be said. This turns into an argument that the spirits are suffering and he's blessed with life since he's not dead, which is honestly just a skill issue since Yoshiki is the best survivor ever and you can't live up to him, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, Ayumi then gets possessed by the thoughts of a cannibal, of a person who died, and they went mad here.
兄さんって美味しそう。兄弟で変かな。私、兄さんを殺して。お肉食べてみたい。
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the?
We get some interesting backstory for Yoshiki here, learning he has a little sister called Miki, and get a bit more hints to Yoshiki's fractured relationship with his parents. While this is happening, Ayumi starts biting Yoshiki's neck. Mayu and then Nana run to try and get her off him, but he gives them a look of, I can handle this, because it's Yoshiki. Of course he can. So Yoshiki then just hugs Ayumi, with Mayu commenting how it looks like the start of a heartwarming romantic scene, after Ayumi bit his neck. Ayumi then shockingly, slowly, comes back to her senses, notices Yoshiki is hugging her, then slaps him. Yoshiki then expresses how happy he is to have her back.
篠崎、心配させやがって。でも、なんつうか、嬉しいぜ。
篠崎さん、大丈夫ですか、岸沼さん。
The group then head to the safest spot they can think of. Yoshiki and Ayumi sit down and fall asleep, and we have Mayu and Nana chatting with each other. They both can't sleep thinking about their friends and obviously the situation they're in. Mayu then talks more about Nana's legs and asks what is that mark, now changing to a deep dark purple. Mayu then compares her looks to Nana and thinks if she was as tall as Nana, who's not that tall, her and Moshige would look more natural. Nana asking if he's Mayu's boyfriend. She denies it and says he's just someone special to her. But Nana sees past it and compares it to Yoshiki, who she has noticed has a crush on Ayumi, and they kind of like Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox, which Mayu then teases Nana about, implying she might be jealous. Now Cosplay is getting back to the teen drama stuff from the first chapter.
お似合いなのに、似た者同士でもあるのよね。素直になれないところが特に。まゆさんも森重さんの前では素直になれなかったりするんですか？だから、そういう人じゃないってばもう。でも、自分でもよくわからないな、この気持ち。しげ兄に会ったら、どうしたいんだろう、私。岸沼くんみたいに抱きしめてほしいのかな。それとも、頑張ったなって頭撫でてもらいたいのかな。やっぱり実際、会ってみないとわかんないや。会えますよ、きっと。岸沼さんがあゆみさんに会えたみたいに。うん。ありがとう。
All this chat reminds Nana how much she misses her friends, so she goes to scout for them real quick.
その辺見てきますね。お手洗いも行きたくなっちゃったし。一人で？危ないよ。
Yoshiki wakes up and suggests that Mayu should go with Nana to keep her safe. So Yoshiki and Ayumi and Mayu and Nana split up. Truly a fantastic idea in the school that changes layout randomly to create horrible situations. Mayu then hears Nana screaming for help, and the sound of her screaming in pain echoing throughout the halls, with what Mayu describes as a butcher slicing up a large chunk of meat, bone and all. Very specific wording right there. Then Mayu sees Nana sprawled out on the floor. Yep, Corpse Party sure loves to lure people in with all the friendly talk about crushes, school life, friendships, then bluntly remind you that this game is evil. And most of these lovable characters are going to experience a fate worse than death. And we see Nana, and she's been severed in half from her legs, which have been crushed at the thigh. Unsurprisingly, the part where her marks were. We never got to see how Nana died in the first game, only finding her ID tag in the dissection room in a bucket. And while this is an alternate universe, it seems this death might be the same one she previously had in the first loop. So Nana is screaming, crying about her legs, and Mayu is in shock and falls backwards, but she notices that the layout of the school has changed, which means they are now in a different closed space than Yoshiki and Ayumi. The door behind Nana having a smell so foul and revolting that would never leave Mayu's senses, and a dark figure in the shadows getting closer to them, dragging something behind them. We then see the figure of Yoshikazu with his bloody sledgehammer and dark, leaking red eyes. He grabs Nana by the head and drags her into the foul-smelling room. As Nana nears death, her screams started getting weaker, but she starts screaming for Mayu to save her. This is absolutely horrific beyond belief. There was some real messed up stuff in the first game, but this is probably one of the scariest and disturbing scenes in the whole series, apart from maybe the kids getting killed. But this is especially bad after having Mayu bond with Nana to then see her pleading for help while Mayu is unable to do anything but watch as she gets dragged into a room. Mayu is forced to hear Nana's primal screams of her last moments alive, a sound that will never leave her memory. All that's left is a bloody trail in the darkness leading to that room. And this is why you don't split up in Heavenly Host. They really should have known that by now. Mayu in shock then tries to follow where Nana has been dragged to, another terrible idea, but feeling guilt from not being able to help her. However, the layout was changed once again and no room existed for Mayu to enter. Mayu then runs and looks down at her torso to see that the marks have turned to a dark red, almost bursting out of her stomach. Mayu holds her contact mirror up and looks at her face and sees a dark bruise. Now Mayu is terrified of ending up like Nana. Yoshiki and Ayumi hear Mayu scream and run up to her. But Mayu is experiencing the darkening and tells them to stay back, scared they'll call her out on her bruises or her marks, trying unsuccessfully to convince herself that she is fine. Now seeing herself as hideous, fearing that if she has these marks, she will suffer the same fate as Nana. Seeing Mayu like this is something we never got to witness beforehand. She literally died too soon for it to happen in the first game. So it's extra disturbing to see such a kind-hearted character be broken. It's like if Seiko was alone in Heavenly Host without Naomi, what kind of difference that would have caused and how horrible it would have been for us to see. She puts on some makeup to hide the bruise after running into the infirmary. She then turns to leave, but the doors to the infirmary have closed, being wrapped in dark black thick hair. Mayu then feels she is being watched and slowly turns around to see a little girl in a red dress with neck marks and black hair who we know as Sachiko Shinozaki. Sachiko describes the room as feeling lifeless and what it needs is a human autopsy model. Sachiko then calls the other child spirits to her location and Yuki asks Mayu if she's come to play with them. Sachiko then tells Mayu to look at her mirror again, and as she does, Sachiko makes a slice on her cheek where the bruise is. Sachiko then begins taunting Mayu, saying she fought so hard against her fate, that now she's going to die slowly. As Mayu looks down, her stomach bruises split open, dripping dark red blood, with Sachiko then telling her that what's worse than dying by, getting smashed against a wall is getting slowly torn apart. The ghost spirits and Sachiko then grab onto Mayu and start tearing Mayu apart, digging into her body, performing a live autopsy, with Sachiko taunting Mayu that Moshige won't be coming to save her. Her last thoughts being her coming to understand that she did feel more for Moshige, and was thinking out the words as she did, with her final wish being that Moshige would think she'd be pretty. Wow, yeah, this is a really rough chapter ending, and those final words have a lot of meaning to Mayu and Moshige's story, with him finding her corpse the most fascinating without realizing it's her. So that's dark. And if you haven't noticed by now, there is no winning in this game. There's no happy endings. Every decision here just has a horrific death. Ultimately, it's pointless. This whole game is just learning more about your favorite characters and then watching them die in horrible, gruesome ways. It's obviously not going to appeal to any normal people. But that's the horror in Corpse Party. The complete lack of hope. And so ends Chapter 2, Demise. Chapter 3 is a weird one, a bit of a palate cleanser, because it's kinda needed after all that. Even just talking about that was rough, but we got a chapter from Satoshi's POV on his way to deliver notes to Miss Yui's house, as a favour from his homeroom teacher. Very interesting request, but here we are. Satoshi then finds her apartment and has some choice words to describe it as completely unremarkable structure, in every way. Some people would describe Satoshi's character the same way. Satoshi then wonders how low teachers' salaries actually are, and then thinks how weird a request this is for a student to do, which, yeah, it's really damn weird. Satoshi then peeks into her house when she doesn't answer, and sees her cute grey cat staring back. Very big tonal change from the last chapter. Since Miss Yui won't shut up about her cat, Satoshi remembers the cat's name being Moret, or Monet, probably named after the French Impressionist painter. Actually, it's definitely named after that. Who else is called Monet? He then tries to open the door, and it opens. Satoshi then starts telling a joke to the cat. That joke is so bad, he should write my scripts. I mean, right now, Satoshi is basically trespassing in Miss Yui's home without permission, and starts thinking how he's alone in a woman's apartment. Corpse Party, I'm watching you. I know you go weird, like really weird, but let's have a limit or a line that we don't want to cross. I'm sure this chapter will be fine. Satoshi then reads the notes, and funny enough, it's the homeroom teacher Yamazaki, there's so many names in this game, saying to remember to lock her door, and then Satoshi feels the presence of another person in front of her. Damn it, Corpse Party! Satoshi sees Miss Yui in pink pajamas with the chest area not leaving too much to the imagination. So Satoshi has just been caught by a sleeping Miss Yui entering her house, and she's in a daze. See, it turns out Miss Yui is really young and not old, as she keeps saying. She's like 23, but she's also at the moment very sick. Because of her saying she's cold, Satoshi buttons up her shirt. Like, how did we get here? One chapter ago, we had just the most disturbing scene in the series, and now we have a scene right out of a really crappy anime that I probably would guilty pleasure watch. Remember how crap it is. But the tone change is just insane. It's fine though, it's not like the whole Corpse Party game is this, because that's the next one. To make matters worse for Satoshi, Miss Yui fully opens her eyes and calls out a name. How do I pronounce this? There we go, Miss Yui did that pretty well. That's actual audio from the game, god damn it. I did say wear headphones. So if you have been looked at weirdly in public, that is your own fault. By the way, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to play Miss Yui saying that name because I can't even make out what she's saying. It sounds like Skasuka. They really just should have called him Nigel. I know it's not Japanese, but it would be easier for me. Anyway, Miss Yui is now grabbing onto Satoshi in her dazed state, and anything he says is not understood. In his words, he was utterly powerless against this opponent. Then he starts talking about the softness of her chest, but then gets back to focus, criticizing himself for being weak Mustering up his strength, he tries prying Miss Yui off of him, but she's stronger than she looks. His upper body possibly about to collapse under the pressure of her softest parts. What a fantastic sentence in my horror game. Every time Satoshi tried to move Miss Yui, would pull him even closer. And don't worry, the game gets even more descriptive because we need more time spent on this scene. How long has it been for me? Oh, just 10 minutes of game time, if you can call this gameplay. As her chest rose and fell erratically, droplets of sweat slid down into her cleavage. 2 years worth of sweat made a glopping. Eventually, Satoshi manages to escape after more descriptive stuff. Then Satoshi picks her up and carries her back into the bedroom. It's at this point you remember, this is a teacher and a student. So why is this in my horror game? How did we get here? Where did we go? Where did we come from? Cotton Eye Joe. Satoshi then pulls up her pajama bottoms, doing his best to avoid seeing anything. But he was a guy, so his heart was pounding.
We're just normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
Satoshi then starts taking care of Miss Yui and holding the cat. And then the chapter starts, wait what? Chapter 3 encounters, so you're telling me that the last half hour, though probably condensed for your sanity, but the last half hour for me was just the intro. I mean, that's fine, that's definitely reasonable. I mean, half of it was just describing Miss Yui's soft parts, and the chapter starts with a flashback of Miss Yui's childhood, and the whole rest of this chapter will be a Miss Yui flashback. Was it needed? No. However, Miss Yui is one of my favorite characters, who should have survived in the first game. We see Miss Yui, now a 17-year-old, talking to her friend Tomio. She then claims her dream is to be a teacher. She should really dream higher. She then, while carrying a heavy garbage can, gets warned by the character Nigel, who looks like every JRPG protagonist ever, but with purple eyes. Miss Yui gets told to watch out for a root sticking out, but she falls, and Nigel laughs at her. Greatest love story ever? No, but seriously, Nigel finds this way too funny from something that really just isn't that funny. Like this video. I guess he likes seeing people fall over, and Miss Yui falls for this guy somehow. Well, I guess she quite literally fell for this guy. Nigel then helps Miss Yui clean up, and he helps carry the garbage can for her. For this kind gesture, Miss Yui feels she should do something nice in return. She then runs off and says it's special because it's that guy. She buys him some coffee, they have some small talk on a courtyard bench. Then, from then on, she met Nigel in the courtyard and chatted a lot. The day then comes that Miss Yui receives a special recommendation for her top choice university. She's obviously excited and wants to tell someone, so tries speaking to her friend, who we never see, and she gives her a harsh tone from jealousy. See, her friend is insecure about her future and taken out on Miss Yui. They really didn't bother making character art for this character, so who cares? I guess they have no future. She starts crying, bumps into Nigel, who congratulates her. Now, turns out this chapter does actually have some relevance to the overall story, despite how weird it is right now. As the day before, Miss Yui takes the entrance exam, she opens the door on a rainy day and finds a white-haired older woman just lying on the ground. Miss Yui frantically runs up to her, and the old woman speaking says, "Young lady," gasp. Why'd I read this out? The woman then gives Miss Yui a piece of paper that Miss Yui then unfolds to reveal a paper doll in the shape of a human, the Sachiko doll. Even stranger, Miss Yui's name is written on it in brushstrokes. The old woman then speaks saying her name is written to protect her. The charm needs a name on the piece of paper for its protection. Oh, its protection is useless now. What Miss Yui needs to be protected from, that's the whole other question, isn't it? Miss Yui tries to give the paper doll back, but is creeped out because the old lady gets up and screams at her. She almost died trying to bring this to Miss Yui. Then telling Yui she must not enter Heavenly Host without this charm. Miss Yui then accidentally drops the charm and Miss Yui's name gets erased with the rainwater. The older woman then collapses, so she calls an ambulance. She goes back to gossiping with her friend. Miss Yui described the old lady that gave her the doll and the story behind it. Kana, another friend, remembers the name Heavenly Host and talks about the 7 wonders. She then tells Yui about the urban legend of Yoshi, after school. The same story Miss Yui will tell her school children many years later.
一緒にあった天神小学校での話なんだけどさ。その天神小学校で放課後校舎の見回りをしていた女の先生が誤って階段から落ちて死んだんだって。その日は10月のちょうど今日みたいに雨が降る放課後で、時刻はそう夜の7時を過ぎたあたり。こういう日はよしえさんが出るんだって。天神小学校がなくなってしまったことに気づいていないよしえさんは如月学園の廊下を見回って歩いているんだよ。
やだ、それ本当？
まあ実際見たことがある人がいるから七不思議になってるんじゃない？
We know this story does have some truth to it, with Yoshi's death being called an accident falling down the stairs when she was pushed, since her death would be known, when in actuality, remember, she was pushed by the principal. Her death would be known, so it's not uncommon for these stories to have circulated. Yui arriving home then speaks to her mother, who tells her that the old woman from earlier passed away at the hospital. If I remember correctly, we'll find out her identity in a later game. Yui, however, while getting ready for bed, remembers that she left her lucky pencil, a gift from Nigel, at the school, and she goes back there to get her lucky pencil.
ちょっとさーっと血の気が引いた。別に筆記用具で困ったわけじゃない。家にはいくらでも代わりがある。だけどあの中には司くんから借りた受験必勝鉛筆が入っているのだ。取ってこなくちゃ。お母さん、私ちょっと学校に忘れ物取りに行ってくる。
え？もうすぐご飯できるわよ。
すぐ戻るから。
そう。雨も降っているし、気をつけていくのよ。
As she enters a classroom in Kisaragi, lightning flashes, causing a blackout. She wanders around, bumping into desks, trying to navigate in the darkness. As she grabs a desk, she finds something slimy. Unsure what it is, she takes a closer look. But as she does, lightning flashes, and for a brief moment, the classroom is lit up with blood splatters everywhere on the floor, desk, and walls. Miss Yui then swears she can even smell blood in the classroom. As she tries to leave the classroom, the door, however, is locked behind her. She then spots a light in the hallway and hears tapping sounds like footsteps.
すみません、閉じ込められてるんです。
The sound suddenly just stopping, and looking through the classroom window on the door, she can see a blue figure standing on the other end. Yui thinks it might be Yoshi, and the school legend could be very real. She closes her eyes but hears footsteps running, sounding like they're coming from inside the classroom she's hiding in. Miss Yui then finds out what's making the sound as the figure speaks to her saying, "Go home," really creepily. Yui then recognizes the person as the old woman from earlier. She then grabs salt from the classroom, opens the door, and throws the salt on the spirit of the old woman. The old woman screaming stop while Yui runs past and away. Unfortunately, the front door is locked. Thinking of another way to escape, she finds an outside corridor that connects the two buildings. That's normally blocked off by a wall, but one not big enough that Miss Yui can't scale it, and very quickly she manages to. As she prepares to jump from the second floor to escape, looking at the muddy ground below her, she hears groaning behind her, and looks at the ledge, and feels something coiling around her arm. Turning to see a ghostly pale woman with a broken neck and soulless eyes, Yoshi herself. Yoshi tells her you mustn't go outside. In this form, Yoshi is just a flickering, barely visible shadowy silhouette, since it's the living world and not heavenly host. What Miss Yui is noticing though is Yoshi is squeezing her arm with a tremendous force. Miss Yui, unable to escape her grasp, starts pleading with Yoshi. She then starts twisting Miss Yui's arm very painfully. Yui starts struggling violently and does manage to escape her grasp. However, in the process, she throws herself off the building. In one last-ditch attempt at survival, she stretches out her arms for something to catch her, and surprisingly, someone does. Nigel, or whatever Miss Yui calls him. But either way, he manages to grab her as she is falling. Now she's hanging onto the building for dear life, in which she describes as like something out of an anime. Nigel pulls her up and then tells her to run. So this is interesting because I didn't actually think Yoshi could exist in the living world this way and be able to harm people. But this kind of adds up to some of the backstory of the curse and Sachiko and Yoshi. Sachiko killing kids to keep Yoshi company. But I really just thought, at least in the living realm, that Yoshi was just an urban legend that only existed in the curses dimension of Heavenly Host. They both try running again, but Yoshi also finds them once again. With Yoshi saying, "Bring me more." So we really are getting the context I wanted of Yoshi's spirit being corrupted and wanting Sachiko to bring her children or company. They see Yoshi's spirit again, still a very shadowy form. I'd call it a darkening shadow spirit, not an official name, just one I came up with, to differentiate them from the ghostly blue spirits. Nigel then has a plan to draw Yoshi's attention, letting Miss Yui make a runner. He uses a charm his grandmother gave him, which has an effect on spirits for some reason. However, he lied. He had no charm, he just got Yoshi to chase him so Miss Yui would be safe. Yui won't let this happen though, and calls out for Yoshi to now get her attention away from Nigel. Miss Yui calling Yoshi's name actually gets Yoshi to then speak to her, saying, "You know who I am then." While saying this, Yui grabs onto the protective charm she was given, the pencil, since a protective charm is just what you believe in. She states to Yoshi her full name, Yui Shishido, and that her goal is to become a teacher at Kisaragi Academy. This doesn't exactly please Yoshi, taking her words to mean she wants to replace her, and that she should die for that. Who in turn then slams Miss Yui into the ceiling. With Yoshi pinning Yui to the ceiling and getting closer, Yui thinks this will be her death. Suddenly though, a bright light appears and the old woman shouts out for Yoshi Shinozaki to stop right there. Yoshi then groans and lunges towards the old woman, and both her and Yoshi disappear after a horrific noise. Yui then passes out in his arms and wakes up to see Nigel's face. He tells her they're in the nurse's office. What's weird though is he tells her she passed out outside, beside the school gate, and he found her clearly not having any knowledge of Yoshi and the events that happened. Yui then feels her arm and is shocked to feel no pain, as if the entire events that happened were a dream. The living school nurse tells her she was having a lot of nightmares. She then gets taken to the top of the roof to watch the sunset in a romantic scene. Nigel leans closer and Miss Yui thinks he's going in for a kiss, but it turns out he just points out a strange bruise on her arm, suggesting what happened wasn't exactly a dream, but they forgot their memory of it. Now the thing about this chapter, apart from it being a very strange chapter, is that we are left to wonder if any of it was real or a dream, or something in between. She could have easily gotten a bruise from something else, but to me, I think it was real, but let me know your thoughts below. And if you have any theories about it, maybe. Miss Yui wakes up and is grabbing onto Satoshi's leg, trouser, I don't know. Satoshi tells her she's strong, and she responds with, she's renowned far and wide for being a weak and dainty young beauty. What the? And Satoshi has the best ever response to this, saying, how exactly do I respond to that, since this whole situation might not have dawned on Miss Yui that her student is in her bedroom in her house, and then she realizes.
どうして持田くんがうちにいるの？
それさっき話したじゃん。
え？
はあ、その調子じゃ何も覚えてないんでしょ。
何も？
さっき俺の作ったおかゆ食って薬飲んでまた寝たじゃないか。その時話したのに。本当に綺麗さっぱり覚えてない？
全然。
笑えないよ、もう。
As Satoshi is about to leave, he teases Miss Yui about. Miss Yui then reveals Nigel was her first love. And that's the end of one of the strangest chapters in the game. And this isn't an alternate universe. It's a chronicle of past events, which means it's canon to the events of the true path of the game. Chapter 4 now, and it starts with Sayaka, Naho's friend, who she's been dragged into Heavenly Host since she needed 2 people to do the charm. blame Naho. So really a terrible friend Naho is. We catch up with her in the abandoned bomb shelter, breaking down, essentially trying to hold on to whatever hope she may have. Recalling her speaking about friendship, it turns out Sayaka is actually getting dragged along the floor by a man. And that man is Yoshikazu. The same hammer-wielding zombie that pulverized Nana's legs is now throwing Sayaka around. He readies his hammer, and after turning her around, he's ready to strike. Sayaka's last thoughts being, she's coming to save me. Naho's coming, as she repeatedly gets struck by the hammer. The game then shows the chocolate that fell out of her pocket and she screams in pain. Well, strange start to a chapter, already just showing a character's death. Normally an end of chapter thing, no? Then the chapter officially starts, called Purgatory. Looks like it's another flashback heavy one with Naho and Sayaka at a concert somewhere with glow sticks. They then get some sweets talking about a radio show Sayaka hosts, and then both start pretending to be cats and meowing. Just go there at this point. I don't even know what this video's turned into, but that girl meowing is the same one responsible for the deaths of so many people.
寒くなかったかい? ん? 君は
おろおろしていた私に目をやり、優しい目でキビキ先生が話しかけてくれた。イケメンだ。わ、イケメンだ。
Both the girls find him hot, like the old school Japanese style hot. Whatever that means. Now I'm just gonna say, I really dislike Naho in every single way, how she dismisses Taguchi here, one of the best characters. Just to have Kibiki for herself, just shows how flawed she is as a person. And I know there's signs of her actually caring a bit about Taguchi, but her flaws certainly outweigh her positives. We get some more talk about how Kibiki's investigation into Heavenly Host will turn the world of occult research on its head, which... is occult research really that well respected? Naho then starts having a nightmare, and this chapter actually seems to have some importance as she sees that train station to Kishi that we saw in chapter 1, Naomi's nightmare, and the words of a child saying, "Daddy's not breathing." Naho off-screen actually went to the Shinozaki estate, resulting in spiritual resistance that temporarily paralyzed the right side of her body, which also resulted in these nightmares. Book of Shadows really wanted to flesh out the lore of Corpse Party and connect all the games. Unfortunately, the end result is, well, you will see. Naho, while investigating the estate, well, she brought back a paper doll that is commonly used in curses, and concludes it's too dangerous to let Kibiki and Taguchi try to enter Heavenly Host. However, Naho is obsessed with Kibiki and also thinks that what he finds in Heavenly Host he could film and then write a book about, becoming successful, and that there's no price that is too high for that. Naho also references an extra chapter in the first game, and that she was also flattered by Kibiki looking out for her safety about Heavenly Host. That she didn't tell him how dangerous it was to be going alone, and truly nothing bad will happen from this. We then get a news report of the body of a schoolgirl discovered in a plaza near escalators in the Tokyo Shinjuku station. Naho writes a letter to him saying she wants to go with him. It's too dangerous, but Kibiki won't allow her to put her life in danger. You see the irony going on here. We then get Sayaka's radio show about her as a high school student. That's some ego right there. Then you see the radio room, which is way too good for a high schooler's radio talk show about them. She even has a freaking director. As Naho is doing the radio show, however, she sees something in the corner of the room. Sachiko is crouched in the corner, her eyes not visible, just hollow, dark holes. Naho believes that Sachiko has attached herself to her and what she calls the far too powerful Shinozaki curse. Sayaka is speaking about ghost stories while Naho is trying not to cough up blood and play along. Just a normal day in school. The recording ends, seems like it went well, with Sachiko now gone. Until the audio engineer mentions, was there someone else talking during the recording? They keep playing back the audio to try and figure out what the third voice is. They do this by boosting the audio until they all finally hear it.
そうですね。これだけの自伝証拠では、これ見えてるって言ってるんじゃない？そうですね。これだ。嘘でしょ？
のっ ちゃったよ。
Then the director starts grabbing at his throat, then a hospital, wait, no, an ambulance. What did I write? The director lives, thankfully, but it's here we can see how the spirit world can really impact the living world in major ways. Obviously, when the Sachiko Ever After chant happens, it pulls them in, but the spiritual world and the living world aren't too disconnected from each other, with Sachiko directly harming someone without them doing the charm or being in Heavenly Host. It certainly adds a new dimension to the curse and the lore of Corpse Party. When Naho gets back home, however, she finds Kabiki has gone to Heavenly Host without her, writing her a letter saying him and Taguchi went, and responding to her dinner question, killing another ship by including Taguchi in on it as well. But more importantly, they're in Heavenly Host. Naho has a calm reaction to the news. Naho then breaks down crying to Sayaka and begs her to perform the Sachiko Ever After charm to enter Heavenly Host to save Kabiki. So yes, Naho has just dragged her friend Sayaka into Heavenly Host with no regard to her safety to try and help the mentor she is obsessed with, who probably doesn't like her back in that way because it's weird. And Naho gets so manipulative when Sayaka asks how it's dangerous. Swearing to protect her no matter what, and we know how that ends. She then starts crying to guilt Sayaka to join her in entering hell. I hate this character. Sayaka makes Naho promise to protect her. Then if Naho couldn't get any worse, well, she does the most evil thing that she could possibly do in this situation, and makes the blog post that tells people how to do the charm so Kabiki can have more analysis to write up about. The reason so many people die in Heavenly Host in modern times is because of Naho, which then strengthens the curse. And maybe the curse is affecting Naho to do this, but all we have is assumptions here, and considering how manipulative and obsessive she is without the curse, I'm not giving her any excuses for this. Then to make this chapter even more cruel, Sayaka's mum is the one who gave her the chocolate, so that her blood sugar doesn't drop. They do the Sachiko Ever After charm, the floor splits, swallowing them, and Sayaka wakes up in a cold, dark and damp room, alone with no Naho to protect her. She then realizes she never actually asked Naho how to get back from Heavenly Host, and Naho didn't think to tell her because, realistically, that's not her priority at the moment. Some friend, huh? It's here you also think back to the first game and realize that Naho only speaks about Sayaka in the notes she writes, regretting bringing her here, but apart from that, she doesn't really speak about her that much. And true, she was under the darkening or semi-under it, but to not even think to tell her how to escape is despicable. Hadn't even considered they might end up in a different place in Heavenly Host, or in this case a different dimension. Out of all places, Sayaka has ended up in the abandoned bomb shelter. That's just super unlucky. Since if you don't know how to enter there, you don't know how to exit it, and I don't even think you can. Sayaka finds many corpses down here, so it's clearly a place other people have ended up or gotten to. The most horrifying thing being the recently deceased corpse with her, while their hands are outstretched to the wall, trying desperately to dig her way through to escape. Sayaka eventually wanders into the worst room in Heavenly Host, the dissection room. A room in the basement with shackles and fresh blood everywhere. Bladed, sharp torture tools like pliers, and buckets of blood, flesh, bone, and body parts. This room is where some of the most gruesome deaths and torture happens in Heavenly Host. And the smell is so horrible you might as well just die from vomiting. And this is also the room Nana was dragged into and that Mayu didn't fully get to see. Sayaka looks closer at the buckets and sees reddish black globs of meat in yellow and white liquids, with one full of human arms. She quickly runs into a closet hearing footsteps nearby. Peering through a gap in the door, she sees Yoshikazu. The tall, zombie-like man, and what's worse, he had the limp body of a girl tossed over his shoulder. He throws the girl down violently onto the table in the middle of the room. And then Sayaka notices her legs have been severed at the thigh, so viewers, listeners, this girl is Nana, and we're about to see what happened after she got dragged away from Mayu. Yoshiki ties Nana to the table with the metal restraints in her arms, locking her in place. Then begins rummaging through his toolbox looking for the perfect tool, and finds it. A large pair of pliers. Now I'm gonna warn you, while so far there's definitely been some horrific and disturbing stuff, what happens in the next minute is a step beyond anything we've seen in the series, so far. So an extra warning because I was feeling generous and I'm not normally the biggest fan of extreme gore and violence in horror, surprisingly. In Corpse Party, the setting and the lore behind it with the psychological aspects makes it work for me. Anyways, enough stalling, let's get to the main event. Yoshikazu takes the pliers and forces Nana's mouth open, then shoves them inside. Then skillfully opens the two metal prongs while pushing it down, as we hear some absolutely disturbing beyond belief voice acting of, well, what I described. He then gets a hold of Nana's tongue with the pliers and in one single movement rips out her tongue by yanking his arm upwards. Nana then dies on that table. Sayaka then pees herself from fear and starts crying. You know, I've talked about pissing in these games way too many times, because they're part of the plot. Way too many times. And I really don't want to be known as the piss and corpse guy. Yoshikazu then tosses the severed tongue into one of the buckets by his feet, grabbing the bucket, then leaving the room. So we found out Nana's fate. That was fun. Fills in the gaps from playing as her in the extra chapter, and like I said, and will continue to say, this game absolutely makes you feel so much worse about the fate of the characters, except Naho. But from playing as Nana in the first game and not knowing her fate, only knowing she did die, it made it feel less bad, but seeing the most horrific death happen to such a kind, nice character who was just so jolly and cheerful with her friends in the first game, it's just pure evil. This game will break you down slowly and make you feel despair. There's no happiness to be found here. It's a very interesting feeling you have when experiencing this game. And you can see it's certainly not going to appeal to most well-adjusted people in society. Sayaka looks at Nana's dead corpse, her face frozen in a look of shock and pain and pure terror. Sayaka then calls out for Naho. Days pass with Sayaka stuck in the abandoned bomb shelter. Sayaka is weak from hunger and thirst but won't eat the chocolate, because to her it's her last bond with her family. Unfortunately for Sayaka, Yoshikazu finds her, picks up her tired body, and drags her across the floor into the darkness we saw from the opening. Her last words crying out for Naho, the friend who doomed her to this fate. The last thing we see is her chocolate, with Sachiko herself picking it up and gleefully eating it, calling it yummy. The chapter ends, and this is what happened to Sayaka and Nana, not an alternate fate, but the original one. They both die this way, in both the original and the alternate timeline. The next chapter is focused on Morishige from his POV in Heavenly Host and opens with a very disturbing image, and I've given a lot of warnings right at the start, but here's where Corpse Party goes up a level in disturbingness, so be warned. I'm gonna have to censor this and just describe it, but it's a female corpse, flayed open, nailed to a wall with lynch pins. This thing I've never seen before, but it's used in construction apparently. With Morishige describing it as a perfect flower adorning the wall with a myriad of colours. So we can already tell this is going to be a very messed up mindset. So Morishige, like we knew from the first game, is very fascinated by corpses and death. I mean, I think it's because he's a theatre kid personally, you know, Shakespeare did hold up that skull. More into Morishige's mindset about Mayu reveals a creepier angle, saying he was the only one aware of the weaknesses that lay within her heart, therefore being the only one who could protect her. Which causes Morishige to then think about how he enjoyed chasing Yuka and causing her to be scared because she was weak. Honestly, I don't really blame Morishige for finding enjoyment of making Yuka scared. But on a more serious note, Morishige as a character's wait, hold on, what does that say right there? Okay, that's totally fine, it's just not, what the f- Alright, so as I was trying to say, Morishige represents perfectly how the darkening can affect a human. We see pretty much all his stages of going into insanity. Now Book of Shadows is certainly adding to that mindset in ways that just maybe is a bit too extreme. Like, it's clear he's always had a fascination with corpses, but yeah, let's just continue and see where this goes. And Morishige does end up regretting his thought process and realizing that Heavenly Host might be messing with him. So okay, he's not totally crazy, normally. I mean, he's just a weird theatre kid obsessed with corpses. Like, all of them.
携帯に保存した画像や動画は全て消しておかないと。
and goes to delete the pictures. Then the episode title appears called Shangri-La, which is the name of the Corpse Party blood cover theme based on an actual fictional paradise. We actually start playing as Mitsuki now, from Byakudan Academy, not the toy. She wanders and finds Kurosaki, a classmate of hers. They both just woke up and they've already seen the corpses already. Then they instantly split up with Kurosaki leaving Mitsuki by herself. I mean, just the greatest logic. So Kurosaki leapt over the gap and has gone to find the others, telling Mitsuki to stay there and wait. Mitsuki then has some inner thoughts about her seeming like a pain in the ass to people, and if she acted more docile and sweet, more people would treat her like a lady. Referring to another classmate called Emi. Time passes and Kurosaki still hasn't returned for a long time, but Mitsuki hears another voice calling out, and it's fuck you, Roy, yes! One of my favourite characters, who technically in the first game only had screen time before dying for less than a minute, and having 2 lines of dialogue in an extra chapter. But what can I say, he made a lot of impact when he was alive. Fuck you, Roy is actually and sticks with her as a group to then look for the others. Along the way they find a lot of corpses and a note describing the victims becoming cannibals to sustain their hunger. They encounter spirits and a vengeful spirit angry that someone stole their head. They break the charms on a door that's, well, got so many spirit charms warning them, and inside it's the girls' toilets. So in this closed space it was sealed with protective charms. They insert a wind-up key into a random hole and it makes a clicking sound like a switch. Then from the hole, a stream of blood begins oozing out. The room starts shaking as another earthquake happens. They leave the room and head back to the entranceway where the front door is now rattling. And it doesn't seem like a decoration, so maybe for the first time in the series they can enter outside the front door. We cut to Morishige still calling and looking out for Mayu, but he just finds more corpses, and then starts talking to them. He's intrigued by how this corpse was someone once alive, who is, now in his words, a rotten piece of meat. We can see Morishige begins to start disassociating himself with the situation, and sees the corpses as something amusing or interesting. Probably as a way to cope, because how can you be scared if you're just describing them as a piece in a museum? It's a terrifying mindset, but I believe it's to try and keep Morishige from giving in to despair, which unfortunately just leads him further down a darkening path of insanity. He also starts mocking the corpses as something pretty in life that when dead, no soul would want to look at. Morishige might have some vanity insecurities, since he brings this point up quite a lot throughout the games. It's also not escaped my mind that every single corpse Morishige has found has been female.
いや、別に何か手がかりでもないかと思って。そうか。ごめん。声が聞こえたものだから。僕は田口翔吾。
Morishige, while studying a corpse, gets called out by Taguchi, Kabuki's cameraman, another one of my favorite characters. He asks Morishige who he's looking for and then starts looking through the footage of corpses and corpse name tags to see if her name comes up, which... Dude, I get the idea, but terrible idea. He does say he was doing it to file a police report when he gets back, and that's actually a good idea for once. This obviously angers Morishige to suggest Mayu would be dead. I mean, there's no way. Taguchi offers for them to group together to search, but Morishige is a loner type and declines, but agrees to fully meet up in 1 hour if they have found nothing in that hour. Eventually, Morishige spots something in a hole, and after a Silent Hill 2-like puzzle bending a wire, he manages to find whatever is stuck down there, and it turns out to be a small notepad with a student ID on it. A student from Kisaragi Academy, and that student being Mayu. Morishige has found Mayu's lost ID. This worries Morishige, causing him to think maybe she's been injured, but also gives him hope because he knows Mayu must be here. He then heads back to the entranceway and waits for Taguchi like they agreed. We cut back to Fukyuro and Mitsuki. It seems a lot of chapters in Book of Shadows follow 2 different groups. They both hear in the distance though Morishige screaming for Mayu. And they actually do find Morishige. Morishige shows them the ID to see if they saw Mayu, but they sadly haven't, or maybe they have and just didn't recognize her. They offer to group up, and for once, because of Fukyuro seeming mature, he agrees. They eventually stumble across a body that has something under it, and Morishige effortlessly picks it up from under the body, impressing Mitsuki for being brave.
すごいね、森重くん。私
わるとか絶対無理。
友達を探すために森重くんだって我慢しているんじゃないか。
He finds a logbook, which was so old it actually belonged to a student of the real Heavenly Host, and explains stuff like when this pool first opened and the memorial service for the 3 murdered children. A lot of Book of Shadows is more just adding even more to the lore and context to Corpse Party, and setting up Blooddrat. You know what, I can't speak that word yet. Solving some puzzles, they enter the reference room and spot a ceramic ornament depicting a demon eating the left arm of a naked, headless figure. Mitsuki then kind of starts flirting or complimenting Morishige after he reveals he's in the drama club, which causes Morishige to have a deep thought about how bad he is at socializing and using the words, "I don't believe in wasting smiles on trivial things," based. He really can't take a compliment, thinking that there's just no way anyone could be interested in what he's saying. And he's right. They end up smashing the sculpture, and inside is a key. Wow, didn't see that coming from every single chapter, having a key be the thing that unlocks a thing that unlocks a thing to find a key. They enter the shower room and see a hanging corpse of a starving body, which... this scene just really sums up the atmosphere of this game, and it's a very effective art style. There's just something about Book of Shadows that feels creepier than most other horror games of this genre. And while making this video, I did have a lot of nightmares, a testament to the atmosphere. But yeah, they weren't exactly pleasant. Entering the pool area, they find Emi, a classmate of Fukuroy, and Mitsuki. Emi has collapsed onto the ground, barely speaking words, then screaming in fear.
どこか怪我は？
他のみんなは？トウコやキザミ君たちは？みんな無事なの？
She then slaps their hands away and makes a frantic dash away from them. Morishige takes his time to go on alone now, leaving them to chase after Emi. He then hears Mayu's singing voice in a quiet whisper from earlier, and starts running to where the sound is. We then cut to another group, and it's Nana's friends, Nari and Chihaya. A lot of characters in this one chapter. Makes you wonder if it would have been better to split this into 2 chapters, or maybe include some of this in Miss Yui's and shorten that, or cut out some of Miss Yui's, or just cut out Miss Yui's. They explore, then find a battery, then across a hole see a man in red collapsed on the ground, but seemingly not dead. He doesn't respond to their calls, so they plan to throw a camera at him. A video camera. You can probably guess who this person might be. We then cut back again to Morishige, obviously not finding Mayu and becoming a lot angrier than his normal calm, cool, collected attitude. Breaking down at the hopelessness of still not finding Mayu, and Taguchi not coming back to the agreed spot in an hour. Morishige then starts getting angry at a dead girl's corpse and kicks a shoe into its face. This chapter is great at showing how Morishige cracked over time and began to take pictures of the corpses. It also gets so disturbing in his anger as he grabs her jaw, shaking it around, and is fascinated to find that it feels like touching living flesh, but immensely cold. He begins describing it like a statue covered in skin and muscle. He snaps back a bit, but then sees her eyes had been sliced up and makes a joke about that she can't have been staring at him. Funny. And then starts laughing. He fully begins mocking it now, even using her real name from her ID. The darkening is taking over his mind, but he does manage to collect himself and even criticize himself for mocking a victim. But then the darkening takes over his mind again, and it gets even more vile, venturing on the topic that's been heavily implied but not stated until now, then describes decomposing, really. Not a good idea to be eating during this video, not gonna lie. And once again uses a soup-like terminology. Soup, piss, and corpses, that's what Corpse Party's about. Then wanting to capture her beautiful form, he takes a picture of the corpse. He thinks of it as she's posing for him. Then Corpse Party goes a step beyond, and Morishige then outright says, and the injuries, and yeah, holy hell, like, the first Corpse Party game had some uncomfortable moments. But this is going so far into uncomfortableness that just witnessing it makes your skin crawl. Morishige gets even weirder. I can't exactly describe on YouTube what he's doing. It's not as horrible to the extreme as you may think, but it's still pretty bad. They ask him if he knows the unconscious person Taguchi, and Morishige gives a low-effort response. Morshige is more fascinated in the camera, which he picks up. They then give him the battery, but he barely reacts, causing them to get suspicious of him. Morshige now has all the corpses on video to look at. He asks them if they've seen Mayu, which they have not. Then Morshige plays back the camera looking for a clue to Mayu, showing all the footage that was taken, which 90% are just the corpse party corpses. Detailed footage that let the viewer work out the cause of death. The girls get really concerned at Morshige smiling and laughing while viewing the corpse party footage. Morshige likes to scare people and make them uncomfortable, now even letting them have the assumption he's a pervert. He leaves Taguchi's camera with him, stating since he's the artist behind the work, only Taguchi can truly appreciate it, completely destroying the point of why Taguchi took the footage in the first place. Suddenly Mitsuki runs into him, but she's like Emi, terrified of everything, telling Morshige to stay back, saying that Morshige is in leagues with him, confusing Morshige who this him could be. Mitsuki in his panicked state though calls out Morshige for his fascination with corpses and the blood on his hands. He then gets annoyed at the sound she's making, saying how humans should understand the value of silence. Morshige then wants to find somewhere to compose himself and goes back to the corpse of the girl flayed open at the start of the chapter, a full circle moment of dread. He speaks about the peacefulness of an overpowering aroma of blood. He sees this as the crown jewel of corpses, which in the first game was Mayu's splattered corpse on the wall, but in this timeline, Mayu didn't die that way. Morshige laughs at a picture, finding so much enjoyment out of it, and then reveals he knows the name of the corpse he's smiling at. Mitsuki, who he now refers to as his property, as an art piece. The twist that Morshige, after all the talks we had with her throughout the chapter, would now speak of her as any other corpse is so devilishly twisted, and just such great storytelling. This chapter's hands down my favourite in the game. Then they pull one final twist, but one you have to work out on your own. And funny enough, it's the same twist as the first game. So try to think back to a character who got flayed open, or dug open, and yes, that corpse, the one he calls a flower, was Mayu the whole time, after being killed by Sachiko and the ghost children, and was then pinned up outside the infirmary, the room she was killed in. It's never actually revealed to the player. But when you look at the signs, you look at the previous chapter, you look at the clothing, and you look at the death, I think we know. And so ends one of the most disturbing chapters or stories in a horror game that I've personally played through. Shangri-La, an alternate universe tale, but also explains a lot of Morshige's actions and thoughts in the first game. The next chapter is a Yuka chapter, so we might as well skip it, honestly. Okay, fine, I'll cover it. We start this chapter with Yuka bound and about to be killed. I've changed my mind, this is the best chapter. Then Kizami appears, and the chapter's titled Maya. Or Mur. I don't know. It's one of them. Kizami is once again calling Yuka his little sister. He goes behind her and raises his knife and says, "It's showtime."
It's showtime!
Okay, you know I'm saving that voice line for later because that's a banger one. Okay, so this is where we're going to skip a bit because it's just torture and weird stuff because it's Yuka. And yes, it involves pee because of course it does, exactly. After taunting her in-game for 20 minutes, Kizami, shockingly out of all odds, starts to have emotions, referring to her as a poor girl, which shocks him. I like how the darkening changes people, but Kizami can't be affected by that. So it's just affected his last traces of humanity. Then we get Kizami backstory flashback, with his mother called his mother. Thank you, game. Who's trying to defend him to the principal for something he did, saying he couldn't have done that. What was he accused of doing? Oh, nothing much, just trying to use scissors to harm another student in kindergarten. Wait, it's kindergarten? Have I always been saying this wrong? But yeah, the proof for Kizami was he was holding his bloodied hand, laughing. So not the best first impression. Kizami doesn't help his case being disappointed he couldn't crush his eye. No, he is a toddler. He self-reflects in his flashbacks, saying he has no sympathy, no empathy, and no respect for life. His parents then saw him as a devil, which, yeah, he kind of is. However, the parents then focused all their attention and love and affection that goes in one direction, and that direction is to his older brother and sister. His parents ignored him, and only his siblings looked after him. However, that's also the opposite effect, as he found them all annoying, and in rebellion, he burned an animal. This causes his older brother to strike him, the first time it's ever happened to him. His brother does care for him, but unfortunately they're dealing with a sociopath. He doesn't and can't understand empathy. The situation is really horrible. His brother then sentimentally says he will always be his little brother, which really annoys Kazami. Haruna, his sister, tries telling him that one day he will understand when he's grown up, which there really is no fix in this situation. Kazami takes this the wrong way and now decides he wants a younger sibling, so that he can be older and understand what his older siblings are talking about. We then get Kizami in the present time thinking about how no one can understand that he can't understand or relate to anyone around him, which is why he plays the part of a loner and studies the world. While saying this, we see images of his fellow classmates. He confirms it's all an act and none of his classmates have been able to tell. He takes joy in deceiving them and mocks them as fools only worthy of his contempt. That's a great line, I'm saving that one. All lying to him by how they outwardly act, as in his opinion, everyone is lying unless you know their true nature. He has decided to conduct an experiment to try and understand other people, and in doing so, make them understand him, in which he just wants to kill them, since humans are only honest on the brink of death. All except one, and Mitsuki right before her death, the killer being revealed to be him. Mitsuki, however, won't give him the performance he seeks, which is begging and screaming. With her dying in near silence, shocking Kizami, and ultimately beating him. I mean, she still died, but she didn't give him the satisfaction he so desperately craved. Kizami, after killing Mitsuki, which great the bloody image, so thanks for that, cause buddy, start thinking about me for once. But he starts thinking about how he expected the school to change him, but even after killing, he didn't feel anything. No sympathy, no empathy, nothing. Anything that a normal human would feel. And this just further confused him. He doesn't regret killing, but he also realizes he now can't be redeemed, and he has no possible future. It's a fascinating insight into his mind. We do learn that Kizami did feel slight pity at times for Yuka, probably because a devoted younger sibling is what he craved all his life. He actually sees Yuka as someone who proves he could still have a future since he felt an ounce of pity for her, which means this really doesn't look good for me, does it? Unfortunately for Kizami, he creeps Yuka out while trying to atone for his sins because he's creepy. Kizami is really upset that even Yuka would distance himself from him, then says his iconic line. In this story, Yuka gets caught by Kizami. Cutting back to the present, Kizami starts questioning why he wanted a little sister. I mean, yeah, valid. Thinking it could change him if he had one. Okay, I guess that's also valid. This thought process actually starts affecting him so bad he has tears in his eyes and grabs at his head in pain. Yuka actually offers him medicine which breaks him. But as Kizami breaks down in confusion, Yoshikazu appears from behind and strikes him with the sledgehammer. Kizami thinks his last thoughts, he comes to the conclusion that if he had a little sister, he would have acted like a proper big brother. Like his older brother when he cried over him. It's quite sad actually, feeling no empathy is a cursed existence, honestly. He wants to understand, but he can never truly understand. Strangely, Yoshikazu doesn't attack Yuka and just stares at her, seemingly scared of her. But then Yuka realizes he's not staring at her, he's staring behind her. Yoshikazu raises his hammer, however, and strikes at Yuka, but smashes the knots tying her down instead. Yuka can now move, but Sachiko says to kill her. Yuka can actually sense deep down though that Yoshikazu doesn't want to kill her, and that she has some influence making him do her bidding. Yoshikazu starts grabbing at his throat. Yuka picks up a bottle of liquid from the ground, which turns out to be acid, because they're in a chemistry classroom. Yuka throws the acid at the hammer zombie man, and then she makes a runner. It's crazy how much more likable Yuka is when you take away Satoshi from her. She actually has a character. Sachiko accuses Yoshikazu of doing it on purpose, treating him like a dog, saying that he gets no more rewards until he kills Yuka. The reward is Sachiko acting like his mother, since Yoshikazu has an illness that reverted him back to a childlike state. Sachiko takes advantage of this, of course. Then Sachiko says something really interesting and confirms one of our theories. that because she still has her paper scrap to keep her safe, her fate hasn't been sealed yet. So it seems like if you have the paper scrap, the person doesn't have a destined fate of death for the time being. Yuka runs away and after an earthquake ends up in the abandoned bomb shelter. Now I need to vent here because my sanity is actually draining, so I'm not going to cut anything out here, and I remember a comment saying I didn't understand Yuka, and I was shite at critical analysis or some crap, and normally I don't pay attention to these comments unless they're actually constructive, but I'm going to have to say something here, because you know what? Let me just read out what I've been cutting out of this video as much as possible. So peeing sound MP3 plays as Yuka says her underwear was completely waterlogged, like a full sponge. It squished unpleasantly on the debris, sending a cold chill through her entire body. I reached down and felt it, and it was absolutely soaked through. It would take forever to dry. That's right, I forgot I peed myself. I didn't even notice the wetness, but now I couldn't get out of my mind. Ugh, it's so gross. Tears were welling up in my eyes. How could I be so pathetic? I forced myself to try ignoring the squishy sensation. My panties were noticeably heavier now, and the urine they absorbed was practically ice cold. And every step was going to be its own form of mushy, gushy hell. Look, I love Corpse Party when it's Corpse Party, the great horror story, the interesting characters, the hopeless situation. But when it's Piss Party, it's really damn annoying. Having to hear piss sound effects, watch them describe someone peeing in so many different ways. So no, Yuka isn't a good character because the author's barely disguised peeing fetish gets in the way of anything interesting she might actually have. Let's just get this chapter over with. Maybe next chapter we won't have the feeling of urine described. Yuka eventually wanders into the corpse power room with the bloody fleshy pool. She thinks about climbing the chute back to the school, but bodies keep falling down into it. She starts crying, then asking for Satoshi, and Sachiko appears, crying out for help as a scared act, since Yuka didn't actually see her in the chemistry classroom. She doesn't know Sachiko's true nature. Sachiko begins acting like other victims, claiming she just woke up here. Sachiko starts calling her big sis and manipulating her to do stuff. Yuka, while trying to comfort Sachiko, accidentally falls into the pool of blood and corpses, and this is a lovely image. Oh yeah, Corpse Party and its soup terminology. Dislodged eyeballs like peas and chicken soup, you gotta love it. Yuka is unwillingly tasting the bits and pieces of other humans while trying not to drown, while Sachiko laughs at her, but then she reaches out an arm to help with Yuka, grabbing onto it and pulling her to safety. Sachiko manipulates Yuka a bit more, then decides to cut the act and start controlling Yuka, and moves her while calling her an idiot. Yuka has basically succumbed to the darkness at this point and is following Sachiko to her doom. Sachiko then asks for one final thing from Yuka. Her life.
Sachiko-chan になら何でもあげるよ。じゃあ次はね。命をちょうだい。命？それはダメし。私の命あげるの?
Which Yuka is unable to disagree with, as her mind is in full control. Then Yuka gets whacked in the head with a sledgehammer, her skull cracking open with one single blow. Somehow she is still conscious for a bit, feeling everything as her brain is exposed to the cursed air. Sachiko then laughs and takes a picture, then gleefully says she's going to show this to Satoshi. So this whole chapter is basically showing us what happened in one of the wrong ends from the first game, my favourite wrong end. And not just because of Yuka dying, but the one where the darkening takes over everyone except Naomi actually. Sachiko does say something very interesting again though, that her goal was to get the paper doll's charm scrap, saying she wants to play with her again, big sister. So she will spare her from her fate for now, confirming the time loop and the paper doll scrap having some sort of protection. But you may notice that when people have the scrap, Sachiko herself doesn't seem to be able to directly kill them. Or maybe even the ghosts. There's an interesting theory here that if you have any explanation, give me your thoughts in the comments. And that ends Maya, another alternate universe tale based on a wrong end. This next chapter, Tooth, starts in Byakudan High School in the student council room. Mitsuki and Faguroi are arguing about stuff, and we have all the other students here as well. Like Katayama, not gonna lie, I don't remember how he died, and Okawa. Okay, I do remember how he died. Those two are talking about playing a dating game and who gets what waifu. The fact that one of them is called Nana had me questioning a lot of things for a second. They explained to Faguroi that this game is about massages and kissing girls, also as Fire Emblem Fates.
We're a real family now.
And I love my family more than anything.
Mitsuki calls them lowlifes, but with a smile. And we are revealed to be playing as Toko, the stabby scissor girl. Well, one of them in the game. She asks if Yuya or Kizami has a girlfriend, which he doesn't. She then tells Kurosaki she is interested in Kizami, and she gets his blessing. The other students show up, and Toko imagines Kizami's perfect face inching closer and closer. We then cut to Heavenly Host Elementary, but this time we're seeing all the students from Byakudan's experience in Heavenly Host. It's basically a Corpse Party butt cover, but the other school group. So this will be fun. Toko starts off with Emi in the girls' toilets, but entering the hall we get a very interesting sight as a lot of students from Byakudan are together. Not split between dimensions, like what normally would happen. Unfortunately, one of them is bleeding from the foot very heavily. That person is Katayama. Kizami has actually tied up his knee and thighs to try and stop the bleeding. It turns out Katayama has walked into a booby trap, resulting in half his leg being ripped off. So he's already in heavy pain. We find out that Emi is the one who suggested to try the charm she found on the internet. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right? We meet a character called Shimada. Here we've never actually seen what they look like, we only found a name tag of this dude. Toko says he has a pretty face, but that's all he has. His attitude leaves a lot to be desired. Cool necklace though. Toko suggests to go look for an exit and Kizami agrees to go with her, which obviously pleases her. Kizami then says one more person should go. Okawa doesn't want to leave Katayama and is a very frightened individual. Now I look at him closer, he kinda looks like me. So Shimada agrees to go and he calls Okawa a useless sack. We see from her thoughts that Toko is someone who is not going to easily give up and take charge even when she's scared out of her mind. Plus she also has this huge crush that's definitely not a murderer. Technically he isn't at the moment. Eventually they arrive at the infirmary door, but Toko feels strange about it. She then notices something very odd. The door is locked, but the key is just sitting in the door. Shimada then makes sure the door is locked and takes the key with him. He then starts acting like an idiot and throwing the key up and down and tries to see if he can touch the ceiling, which ends up with him losing the key by throwing it into the roof. He has an emotional response to this. So now they can't get to the infirmary whatsoever, but they do get excited, or Toko does, when they find the front entranceway and an exit. Lo and behold, for one of the first times ever, the door opens, and they see the outside of Heavenly Host. The dark, never-ending forest, very rare in the games, for any character to go here or even properly see it. It's raining outside, so it's probably Scotland, and they agree now that they have an exit secured, they can go get Katayama and leave. You know, this has got to be one of the coolest feelings in your mind, to have the idea of the exit, see the outside, and actually have hope to then find out they're in a completely different dimension. And we never really got to see this kind of false hope because no one was ever able to open the front door. Shimada decides though he just wants to leave, which, you know what, fair enough. Though Shimada then says they're going to die one by one and he doesn't care honestly, maybe he has more in common with Kizami than Toko thinks. Shimada then asks if Toko wants to come with them, gets a bit creepy. Toko gets a bit pissed off by this, and then Shimada gets pissed off at her calling her ugly and a dog. A female dog. Kizami was just watching this and just stares blankly at Shimada. This causes Shimada to pull out a large knife that he has, then explaining that he bought it yesterday. Toko at this point has already ran away in anger, so it's just Kizami and Shimada alone, with a big knife. We switch back to Toko, very annoyed and saying how Shimada has 10 girlfriends and how he's speaking a load of crap.
何が大事に思ってたよ。どんだけ女の子バカにしてんの。マジ許せない。
Kizami catches up and keeps pace with Toko, with her then overthinking on how she's acting towards him. They then hear Mitsuki call out the only person not with them. Oh, and fuck you, Roy forgot about him somehow. How's it even possible to forget about fuck you, Roy? That's my bad. They meet back up with Emi, and Kizami barely saying anything, just following behind. And Emi has a very worried and scared look, and explains Katayama is getting weaker from blood loss. Okawa is trying to get him to speak, but he's not saying anything. Kizami then just silently walks over to Katayama and examines his wound, and they all decide to pick up Katayama and take him to the exit they found, asking Kizami to carry him. Toko then remembers they heard Mitsuki and asks to run downstairs and find her. Kizami doesn't say anything, but his eyes tell her that he trusts her. While Toko looks for Mitsuki, she runs into the ghost of Ryu. Then we do some puzzles, get an amethyst, don't question it. Then we make Ryu disappear. Going up the stairs, she meets back up with Emi, who is now shaking her head violently, wrecked with tears. Katayama is motionless on the ground, strangely, despite Kizami carrying him. She asks why Kizami is still here, and Emi explains that Katayama has died. He let out a huge scream, and then died once she left. Okawa now won't move from Katayama's side. The girls can't stay near his body though, so Kizami stays with Okawa. But then they hear footsteps coming down the hall, but it's too dark. They can't see. They can make out a man slowly coming towards them, and it turns out to be Shimada, but he's drenched. Shimada keeps walking slowly down the hall, then suddenly falls forward on his knees. As they rush towards him, blue glowing children appear around him and start laughing. The children then vanish, and they look closer and see that Shimada's stomach has been stabbed and flayed open with the knife still in his body, and he was very much dead. Kizami appears from behind them. Toko becomes deathly afraid of everything, and then Sachiko appears. Toko notes she could feel the hatred in her eyes when she stared into their souls. Emi goes to try convincing Okawa that they have to leave, since Katayama is dead. But Okawa is in complete denial of his death, not accepting this reality. Toko runs back to go and help them, but stumbles into something. Okawa screams, "Murderer." Kizami has thrown Katayama's body down the stairs, horrifying Emi and Okawa. Emi screams, then runs away. Okawa's clutching his arm like he had broken it and crawls towards Toko. Okawa then screams a warning to Toko to run away or she will be killed. He then gains a second wind and runs off towards the second floor. Kizami then approaches Katayama's body and begins inspecting it, then lets out his signature evil laugh. Toko then realizes that he was enjoying this, his face full of elation. Both girls then run for their lives.
信じられないよ。じゃあ勝手にすればいいよ。
Kizami catches up to them, but now he's holding Shimada's huge knife. Toko, instead of running away, decides to try speaking to Kizami to figure out what's going on. Kizami then weirdly says, "You to her. You're the same as them." Muttering to himself, then slowly walking past her. Toko then calls out the knife in his hand, then grabs onto him by his arm. Toko still sees Kizami as the kind boy and thinks he's at a crossroad, about to walk down a path she can't follow. Kizami in response says, "It's the same in here, you know. Getting killed by this school or getting killed by me." Kizami has straight up punched Toko in the face and does so again. Toko, though, manages to gain energy and run away, running on pure instinct and adrenaline. She feels something rattling in her mouth and spits it out, only for it to be her tooth, like the name of the chapter. Toko quickly sees that he is behind her and panics, tripping and stumbling to the ground, her tooth falling beside her. She screams for someone to save her, then starts crying in fear. As she scoots backward though, her hand captures on keys on the floor. She scrambles to her feet and manages to slip past Kizami. With this key, she could get access to the infirmary and hide. Like where we find her in Corpse Party Blood Covered, in one of the wrong ends. So a lot of this game is really to fill in the gaps of knowledge, to have, I guess, the ultimate knowledge of Corpse Party possible. Which both these videos so far should teach you everything you need to know. Kizami in all of this doesn't pursue after her, just stares at her, and then picks up her tooth and eats it, crunching on it with realistic sound effects. Consuming her tooth, grinding it into nothing, this poor girl who had a crush on him. He then laughs. Toko, entering the infirmary, finds she can't lock it from the inside, so needs to find somewhere to hide. Seeing a pair of bloody scissors she could use to defend herself. We cut back to Emi and Okawa speaking of a ghost girl coming for them. A ghost girl in a red dress. Okawa, however, is still not willing to leave Katayama behind, insisting that he should be taken to a hospital. We then see this is moments ago from Kizami's point of view, and why he decided to kick Katayama's body down the stairs. Kizami did this to get Okawa moving. This suggests maybe the darkening actually did have an effect on Kizami, and he wasn't originally going to kill them. We then see that Okawa fell down the stairs himself, and wasn't pushed like we might have assumed. Then when Okawa calls Kizami a murderer is when Kizami says in his mind that he didn't kill Katayama, and comes to the conclusion that getting killed by the school and getting killed by me are one and the same. The chapter ends, and so many questions on if Okawa didn't react calling him a murderer. Would Kizami have come to that conclusion? Or would he eventually always come to that conclusion? And this isn't an alternate fate. It's what actually happened in the first game, for the Byakudan High School students. Alright, before we go into the final chapter, I want to thank you all for making it this far into the video. This was a challenge to make a video on for sure with the way the game is and the subject matter. But if you have been enjoying and liking the video now, and were so engrossed, before we continue on to the final chapter, now would be the best time to stretch, get food, drink, probably apple juice for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and let's get ready for the final chapter and the ending of Corpse Party Book of Shadows, and the only chapter that is the sequel part of the game. We made it, or if you're still watching, you made it. And I wouldn't blame anyone who didn't get this far. I mean, a lot of it was talking about piss and corpses and Morshige's weird fetishes and the author's really weird fetishes. But we are now at the concluding chapter of Book of Shadows named Blood Drive. Sorry, I cannot fully say that word. It brings back a lot of bad memories. Okay, here we go. Blood Drive. Man, you can just feel the wasted potential dripping from that word. This chapter starts after the end of the first game, the only one. We see Naomi overhearing gossiping housewives about an underground website, and then discussing the importance of internet safety. Naomi has been every day constantly standing outside of Seiko's house after school, for over an hour now, wondering if she should push the doorbell. Remember, no one remembers the people who died in Heavenly Host, apart from the people who were actually there in the cursed school. She works up the courage and prepares to push the intercom, but suddenly, Seiko's laughing siblings exit. Naomi hides out of sight before they can see her, and then we see Naomi take out her phone, and her picture of Seiko has a big dark hollow mark where her face is. It's like her photo is slowly being erased. Another cruel form of torture from the curse. Not even being able to look at pictures of the cherished dead. No way to remember them but from memory. As Naomi prepares to show the photo to Seiko's siblings, her arm gets grabbed from behind. Revealing to be Ayumi, telling Naomi sadly to not do this. She explains to Naomi that Naomi knows what's going to happen if she tries talking to them, which causes Naomi to break down crying. Ayumi, equally as sad, reveals that she's been doing research. Gee, because that worked out well last time. So Ayumi has been investigating information on the Shinozaki estate, the house where Yoshi and Sachiko Shinozaki lived. Ayumi has been thinking about how the articles didn't have too much to mention of Sachiko about the actual incident, with Yoshi's death also not having much news coverage, which are both very strange. Naomi trusts her because she is an expert in ghosts and occult, but I feel like they're kind of downplaying it's her who looked up to Naho's blog that caused all this. I feel maybe Naomi should think a bit about that before doing more stuff with the occult.
ええ、天神小学校はもともと私たちの地元にあった学校なの。そこに勤めていた篠崎義恵の家なんだから、それほど距離は離れていないわよ。奈穂さんのブログにも載っていたんだけれど、あの人が幸子さんの片白のオリジナルをサルベージしてきた現地なの。ね、何かあると思わない？そこには今でも篠崎家の呪いのオリジンが眠っているのよ。呪いを解明する何らかの手がかりがきっとあると思うの。私は思わず唾を飲み込んだ。
So Ayumi is like, hop on this train and let's go to the cursed estate, and Naomi agrees. You would really think they would have learned to not do this kind of thing. On the train they sit in silence with Naomi going over how the last couple weeks have been brutal for all the survivors, with all the photos of their dead friends blacked out. Ayumi brings up that dying in Heavenly Host has your existence removed from the living world, then shows Naomi Naho's blog. Interestingly though, Naho's blog still remains, even after she died in Heavenly Host. Her existence wasn't forgotten. They both use this as proof that not everyone gets erased from existence. Kabiki also still has records of his life. They both gain some hope from this, trying to find a way to restore their friend's existence and memory. We then see what the first chapter of this game showed us out of context, the Kishi Station. So it was showing us this future for some reason. They end up in a pretty isolated looking Japanese village in the country, and are quite unsettled to be no sign of any life. but they decide to try asking a local resident for information about the Shinozaki estate, and an older lady answers the door. The older lady being middle-aged, which the girls then call her an old woman because of this. I can see now why Miss Yui was having so much insecurity about her age. The middle-aged woman is very cheerful and friendly, but once they mention the Shinozaki estate, her tone changes completely. To anger and shock.
この住所に行きたくて、でも番地の詳細がわからないんです。こちらのお宅なのですが。
どれどれ？篠崎の家になんのよ？
実は私たち調べ事をしていて、ね。あ、はい。学校のことで必要があって、おばさんは急に立ち上がり、強引に私たちの体を家の外に押し出した。おばさん、何？
出て行きな！早く出て行きな！
何なの？
The lady then pushes them out of her house and screams at them. And to this point you might think, maybe this isn't a good idea. Well, that should have been the thought process when Ayumi first suggested it. They get a hitchhike in a truck up to the Shinozaki estate and swear they spotted a figure on the road. They walk up towards the estate, but unfortunately there is no house here anymore since it was torn down. However, strangely, one sole barn remains untouched. Inside, they find it still has electricity and pick up an old, worn-out blanket. It's now nighttime outside, so they agree to head back tomorrow, which... wow, the parents must be worried sick about them right now. Thankfully, the truck driver still has the lights on and waited for them. Though when they go up to the truck, the driver isn't there. The engine is still running, though, so he's just left to pee. I don't know. I mean, the game doesn't spell it out, despite the fact they love to spell it out when Yuka was... The truck is locked, so they can't get inside and are stuck in the cold, dark forest. I mean, wow, I couldn't have seen this coming. Couldn't have waited for, I don't know, a weekend so they'd have actual time to investigate, not a day after school. It also turns out their phone is out of range to make any calls. I mean, I know they're teenagers, but they're really dumb teenagers. They then decide to try heading back to the barn and spending the night there in the Shinozaki estate. Boy, but they get lost in the forest in the dark as the trees look like they're trapping them. Nothing scarier than a forest at night playing tricks on your mind. They then start hearing ghostly sounds. They keep on walking but still get lost. Honestly, this must be what it's like in the Heavenly Host Forest, but we wouldn't know. It's the one place no character who has ever seen has gone. Finally, Naomi starts thinking about how worried her mum would be. Yeah, might have been a good thing to tell her. As they go to the barn, though, they get spooked, as right next to the barn is the Shinozaki estate reformed with a blue glow around it.
昼間更地になっていた篠崎家の跡地に古い屋敷がぼーっと浮かぶように立っていたのだ。私も委員長もありえない光景にただ呆然としていた。なんでさっき夕方なかったよ。なかったよ。なかったけど。じゃあなんで立ってるの？知らないわよ。全身鳥肌が立っているのがわかる。背骨の上を冷たい汗がずーっと滑り流れていく。うっすら光ってない？この家何なの？ボロボロに老朽化した2階建ての建物にはしかし確かに篠崎と表札がかかっていた。これはやっぱり
Ayumi starts hyperventilating despite the fact she's seen stranger stuff and this was her idea to investigate a cursed estate in the first place. How is this shocking to you? What did you expect on a cursed estate? So they decide to enter the creepy house and they find that Yoshi ran a clinic from the house in the past and everything in here fits the time period. It's like history come to life. Ayumi almost gets possessed again. Ayumi does support Naomi and reminds her to not let the curse of the Darkening take over. It seems that it can affect them from here as well. They find photos of the Shinozaki family life with Yoshi's overwhelming love for Sachiko shown in them. All the Shinozaki woman pictures are fine. One with the father is scribbled out and unrecognizable. Scribbled out with a ballpoint pen. They unlock a safe using Sachiko's age of 7 as the code. It's actually cool to see Naomi and Ayumi work together in this part. We only see the worst parts due to jealousy and darkening in the first game, so seeing their friendship grow is fun. Discovering a hidden passageway, as they always seem to do, they explore it and they think they're about to discover the truth behind the curse of Sachiko Shinozaki.
恐ろしい運命が待っていたとしても、これは私たちが喉から手が出るほど欲しかった呪いの真相への入り口、新しい世界への扉。引き返したら一生後悔する。私たちは顔を見合わせて地下に降りる決心をする。
おそらくこの先はナホさんも到達していない領域だわ。気をつけて中島さん。何が起こっても気を緩めちゃダメよ。
さっきの足音、やっぱり何かが歩き回ってるんだ。2階に来てる。
They find themselves in a basement filled with saw blades on a desk and sharp tools. They then look at a family tree chart on paper of the Shinozakis. Ayumi recognizes some of the names. We get a flashback of her sister Hinoe talking about how certain people achieved fame for their psychic talents.
明治後期にたくさん生まれた念者、千里眼といった能力者たち。有名な千里眼事件の三船千鶴子や長尾育子。あの先人たちの能力の真偽はともかく、超能力が科学に負けたあの宣言から後も、能力者たちは野に伏せながら自らの力を錬成し続けているのです。
Called the Gifted Line, which means Yoshi and Sachiko are descended from those famous spiritual people. What's really odd though is the Shinozaki line was never blessed with male heirs. The way they keep the Shinozaki name is by adopting a male into the family to be married, which is what happened with Yoshi. The first name in the family tree is someone called Sira. Yoshi's mother named Raki, a direct descendant of Sira. What's even weirder though, is that all the adopted fathers died suddenly after their daughters were born. We hear a ghostly echo of Yoshi crying over her husband.
お父さん息してないよ。
あなたやはりこれは行うべきではなかった。
なんて強い霊障。
Ayumi notes how strong Yoshi's spiritual influence must be to be actually hearing. Ayumi then makes the discovery that every single person thought once they learned that Sachiko and Ayumi have the last name of Shinozaki. And yes, it's revealed Sachiko and Ayumi are from the same family tree. But what is strange is it's from her dad's side. Her dad, whose grandfather died after he was born. Which is really strange because male heirs aren't meant to be born. But her dad is the exception and is the Shinozaki in the family. Which means Ayumi is directly related to the gifted line.
能力って何？
ねえ、何かあったの？暗くて怖いよ。
ごめんね。すぐそっち行く。ちょっと危ないけど、私のろうそくあげるよ。
As they turn to go, a creepy voice says,
Book of Shadows.
Now he kind of sounds Scottish, I'm not gonna lie.
Book of Shadows.
So yes, when I said that this is the only chapter that actually explains the name of the game being the
Book of Shadows.
I wasn't lying this time. It's kind of like in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 movie, where the Deathly Hallows is only talked about for like 5 minutes near the end of the movie. Actually, it's exactly like that. Ayumi starts clutching her head as it feels it's being crushed, so only she heard the Book of Shadows. She then freezes and slowly walks into a corner staring at a blank wall. Ayumi then suddenly begins tearing away at loose boards, opening up the wall to reveal a table with a purple cloth, 3 candles, and a book sitting on it. Can you guess which book it is? Ayumi then screams out that it's the Book of Shadows.
Book of Shadows!
A very old brown book with a human skull, its mouth open protruding from the front cover. A liquid that could be blood but has multi-hued stains across the front cover's lip. Ayumi explains the pages are made from human skin, animal hide, and this is without a doubt the Book of Shadows. Which, phew, I thought I was playing Go Party. Good to know I've been playing the right game, Corpse Party. Book of Shadows. Ayumi explains her sister told her about it, a dark tome passed down in secret for many generations, dating all the way back to the Middle Ages in Europe. So it's not actually a Japanese book, probably why it has an English name, the Book of Shadows. She talks about the witch hunt, which is in our history mass paranoia that led to the murder of over 40,000 people. People turning on each other and accusing each other of making pacts with devils and practicing dark magic. Which when you go to the Salem museums, you actually find out some just lied about people on purpose. Inoue then explains most were innocent. Some gifted people among them did practice magic. Among us, you would say. After the eventual ban on witchcraft and not being able to use spiritual evidence as a trial point, the actual witches did write down all their spells. This story is going a really weird turn, isn't it? But they put them in the book. The Book of Shadows. Yeah, that one. This one book has potentially a complete spell list of all white and black magic spells, and even forbidden spells. It's like a Potterhead's wet dream. Ayumi then explains how dangerous it is and how it was protected by the witch's descendants. Then decides she's going to take a little peek in the book, saying it can't hurt to take a little quick look. And you trusted this person, Naomi. Ayumi then finds out what she was looking for, the Land of Corpses spell. A spell that can open the door of the dead. And Ayumi suspects this is what created the Heavenly Host. So why would you ever try that spell? Then she finds a spell called Raising of Corpses. I mean, we've seen what happens with necromancers, it's not what you think. Ayumi then starts getting angry at Naomi for thinking maybe this isn't such a good idea, accusing Naomi of not just being scared, but forgetting all the people they lost and how they are suffering. And whose fault is that? Ayumi has seriously tried talking down to Naomi, as if she's the one who trusted Naho's crappy blog. In defense here of Ayumi, she's clearly feeling the guilt of causing all that and projecting it onto Naomi. This is what she thinks she herself is responsible for, which, it kinda is her fault. But at the same time, not her fault as well. She is just a teenager who is feeling like the others some severe survivor's PTSD, and guilty for what was her idea. The fact she's bringing Naomi along for this is kinda cruel though, but it definitely makes Ayumi a flawed human character. They think about how absolutely foolish it is of them to try that, but that the possibility of working is too good not to do. So Ayumi remembers that people who practice forbidden sorcery suffer a payback worse than black magic. But in her words, this book isn't written in Japanese, so she can't read any warnings, so out of sight, out of mind. They decide to start with Mayu and they need a photograph. They make a really creepy pentagram with candles and all sorts of stuff, like beetle carpus, however you say that. They place 3 Sachiko paper dolls, with the one in the middle having the dead's name and the ones beside it having the casters Naomi and Ayumi. They then place Mayu's photo on her paper doll, then blow on them 3 times, then cut their palms with a knife and coat the materials in their own blood. Well, this took a dark turn. Not that anyone didn't think it would. Luckily, and what amazing luck, the foreign words for the spell all had Japanese translations for them, crisis averted. So Ayumi performs the magic spell that took several hours. What? Was Naomi just standing there for several hours watching Ayumi chant random gibberish? Ayumi says the last words and is about to pass out, then blood-red stains appear on the book, before Mayu's picture ignites and burns to nothing.
慌てて暗黒の書を火から隔離する。鈴本さんの写真は燃え尽きてしまった。けれど彼女の片白には火がつかずに残っていた。何これ？成功なの？ この声は鈴本さんだ。私たちは手を取り合った。
They then hear Mayu call for Morishige. Ayumi then stops Naomi from calling out for her and says something's not right. She's walking in circles. They then wait as Mayu slowly comes down the steps and they see that she has no face. It's been completely blotted out like black pen.
鈴本さんだった。だけど顔が真っ黒。目も鼻も口も何もない。
And Mayu falls to the ground in pain, screaming. Mayu starts writhing and spasming, and eventually rune-like figures appear on her body before bursting into a pool of blood. Her limbs all separate as she lays on the floor as a bloody pulp. Kind of becoming a little bit of a pattern for Mayu. So shockingly, everything went wrong. But then, to get even worse, Ayumi has the rune marks appear on her, then gets stabbed in the exact same spots Mayu did, like a voodoo doll, with all the sharp objects in the room. The paper dolls start burning and more sharp objects literally stab into Ayumi like a literal saw blade. Naomi then realizes this is the exact same death that Mayu's figure just had. Seems like a really crappy spell, no? Ayumi cries for Naomi to put out the paper doll, trying with her hands, and shockingly, it doesn't work. I mean, who could have seen this happening? It's as if they say, out of sight, out of mind. The book itself starts laughing, stretching out with a tongue and glowing eyes and razor-sharp teeth. Ayumi is currently getting cut apart by saw blades, and Naomi sees the next doll for her is burning, which means she's next. Out of all odds though, an angel, Hinoe, leaps over and dives towards the dolls and throws, I don't know, pixie dust or something, some magic spell that extinguishes and stops the ritual. Ayumi pants out the word sis, then starts crying. Naomi works out this is her sister. Ayumi is being hugged by her sister, Hinoe, crying into her. Then asks how she knew where they were, but Hinoe doesn't answer, just stares at her. Then her head explodes, covering Ayumi in her sister's blood, hugging onto her now decapitated corpse. And the chapter ends with a to be continued in another game. A game that is not covered next, because there's still a little game called Sachiko's Birthday, but that's for another time. Alright, let's get to my final thoughts on Corpse Party Book of Shadows, and where do we start here? I guess with the story, and as a sequel not sequel, but one chapter is a sequel. Corpse Party Book of Shadows narratively has a lot of strength when it's focused on the gaps we had from the first game. Morishge's chapter was amazing and probably my favourite of them all. Seeing into his depraved mind was fascinating. The first chapter was a heartbreaking story on fate and the dangers of it. Best of all though was getting to play and learn more about characters from the other schools like Kizami, Toko, Mitsuki, and getting that satisfying feeling of now having all information about the Heavenly Host experiences for the characters. Well, almost all of them. The Miss Yui chapter, despite her being one of my favourite characters, really felt like a fanfic through and through, and not in the good way really. There's so much plot holes there with Miss Yui getting warned about Heavenly Host as a teenager that adds up to nothing because she dies anyway, and is barely given the development she deserves, and you have to question Yoshi being able to attack people in the living world. It's kind of a mess plot-wise and really not that interesting to me, especially her lover or crush, Nigel, or whatever he was called. That didn't really invest me in anything, and this game is bloody long, let me tell you that. Each chapter on their own is like 2 hours, and that's if you know what to do. I couldn't actually show the wrong ends in this video because some of them are too much for YouTube. And most of the true endings are better wrong ends anyway, so pacing wise, I think for this one Corpse Party game it works better. Not that I had much say in being able to show the wrong ends. But yeah, you could definitely cut out Miss Yui's chapter, and really a lot of the problems of the game is just there's too much filler that could be cut from every chapter. Now gameplay wise, I mean, I'm just gonna say it, this game would be better if there was no gameplay. Because it's all the same thing, find a key, look around, choose a choice that's right. But taking away the ability to walk around as a sprite, It's just quite boring at times. The game for sure is better played in small bursts, but since I was making a video, I couldn't exactly do that. And it's really just a massive downgrade from the first game. If this had the same gameplay as the first game, this would hands down be the best Corpse Party game. With all the story we have here, with the gameplay of Blood Covered, you literally have the perfect Corpse Party game. This is also the beginning of Corpse Party's downfall. You can see the cracks in the over-explaining of topics that really didn't need to be explained, and of course the really weird and disgusting P stuff, which is just not needed. And while Corpse Party has so much fascinating lore, you really have to get past all the weird stuff to get to it. So hopefully now with this video out, this is becoming the place that will have all important Corpse Party lore, or anything you really need to know. And as we continue on in this series in the future, and that next game is going to be harder to do than this one, but we will really see the eventual downfall of Corpse Party, and then maybe the rise and return in the future. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you liked, commented below. There's a lot to talk about here, let's be real. And stay tuned for more game analysis commentary videos, but as a little sneak peek, the next video, which is a different game from Corpse Party, is already being worked on, and will be out a lot quicker than this one. And then after that, it's the Sajiko birthday game. And that will be a video you don't even want to miss. So let's get onto the Patreons now. Thanks again to James for subscribing to the Patreon, and his favourite character is Pyramid Head. And thanks to Amster Hollow, and their favourite character is Master Chief from Halo. If you want to support the CyberLocky channel in other ways than just subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing, then you can check out the Patreon and get a downloadable audio-only version of the video, and others to listen to whenever you want. And once again, thank you for watching the entire video. Check out these videos and playlists for more long-form games, and stay tuned for what's coming next in the very near future. If you like this video and are new here, I hope you stay, and if you're a returning viewer, then you're here forever, unlucky.
It's okay. They're gone.
Tsukasa-kun!